The story is set in a brutal world where the blood of the weak is constantly spilled by the strong. In this place, only the most powerful can drink of that blood and survive amidst the chaos. In a dark, dense forest, a creature that looks like a deer is feeding peacefully, but what it doesn't know is that it's being watched and has already been marked as prey by hunters. Hidden in the bushes, our main character gets ready to shoot as someone advises him to stay calm. He then pulls the bowstring back with all his might, preparing for the perfect shot. His companion gives the signal, and he lets the arrow fly toward the defenseless animal. However, right as he shoots, a loud sound echoes through the forest, and the creature gets spooked by the noise. In desperation, the older man shouts the protagonist's name, which is Johan. Johan appears with a sheepish grin, holding the broken bow, while his master chews him out for the failure. He tries to defend himself, saying the bow broke way too easily, but his master snaps back that he bought it just a week ago. The older hunter starts to tear up, complaining that Johan, as a noble, shouldn't be so fixated on being a hunter. He goes on, saying the young man could have learned to use swords instead of a bow. Hearing the complaints, Johan stays silent for a moment, a serious expression on his face. Then he replies that being a swordsman doesn't pay the bills until you land a gig. The master agrees on the money issue, and the two decide to move to another spot to hunt. The MC reflects that he needs money to survive in this rotten, broken world. We find out his name is Johan Ates, and that he was reincarnated into this world after an accident in his past life. Despite being reborn as a noble, he's at the bottom of the family totem pole and won't inherit a thing. Back in the present, his companion warns him as a pack of wild wolves appears in front of them. The wolves then charge furiously, baring their sharp teeth at the two hunters in the clearing. Without a second thought, the older hunter turns tail and flees in terror, leaving Johan behind. But the protagonist remains calm and begins to reflect on the nature of the world he's been reborn into. He understands that this place is a very realistic and grim representation of a cruel medieval era. The cruelty is so great that even those who have passed on don't seem to find rest in this desolate place. His companion wonders if the bodies are from their village, but Johan says it's impossible to know. The young man then states with certainty that in this world, the weak are just prey for the strong to feed on. With that in mind, he clenches his fist, determined not to become one of those easy targets. To avoid that fate, he shouts with glowing eyes that the only thing he needs is a whole lot of money. He remembers that when he first arrived, he hoped for some special skill or a status window, but since none of that happened, he changed his main goal to one single thing: making bank. With cash, he could leave this territory and do whatever he wanted, like become a merchant or a farmer. While he's lost in his greedy thoughts, his master calls him over to see something he found nearby. The hunter shows him a rare medicinal herb called imp's grass, which is great for stopping bleeding. Without hesitation, Johan snatches the plant from his hand, thinking only of how expensive and valuable it must be. With a hilarious look on his face, he mentally thanks him for the cash, leaving his companion completely speechless. A moment later, Johan points to a small pouch on the ground, saying the master dropped something. He picks up the pouch, but the hunter says it isn't his and finds it strange, since no one else goes this deep into the forest. Suddenly, the master looks shocked, his eyes wide as if he's realized something terrible. The two look up, startled, as they hear a strange noise coming from the darkness of the forest. All of a sudden, a desperate voice echoes through the trees, screaming for help as it runs aimlessly. Hearing the screams and the growls of the wolves, Johan and his companion look toward the sound, terrified. They then spot a little girl cornered up in a tree, surrounded by the pack of furious wolves. The master recognizes her as Dell, Robert's daughter, and wonders what a child is doing so deep in the woods. The wolves seem bigger and more aggressive than usual, baring their teeth and snarling at the girl. Terrified, the hunter says they can't handle so many wolves on their own and suggests falling back to get help. But Johan stops him from running and decides to move toward the danger, much to the older man's surprise. Joseph yells that it's dangerous since wolves are predators of humans, but the protagonist reassures him. The young man says he'll distract the pack, so his companion can rescue the girl safely. The hunter is stunned, unable to believe that a noble would offer himself as bait to save a commoner. However, Johan has a sly grin on his face, because he's realized this situation is a gold mine. He counts at least 10 wolves, and already starts calculating the profit he'll make selling all their pelts. With an ear-to-ear grin, he gets ready to face his precious little money makers. Seeing the young man's attitude, his companion is completely confused, with no idea what's going on. Then the protagonist draws his sword with a strange stance, and Joseph questions his sloppy swordsmanship. Wasting no time, the beasts charge toward him, ready for the imminent attack. The young man moves in a blur of speed to intercept the animal's attack. He manages to block the first wolf with his sword, holding back the ferocious creature's charge. The beast bites down hard on the blade, trying to break it with its fangs. Unwilling to let go, it continues to put pressure on the sword with its jaw. To the protagonist's surprise, the sword shatters from the force of the wild wolf's bite. Before he can react, another creature attacks him from the side, its mouth wide open, ready to bite. Amidst the chaos of the battle, the young man is surrounded by the wild beasts in a brutal scene. Joseph watches in horror and screams Johan's name in despair, fearing the worst. Meanwhile, somewhere else, events are unfolding in a very different way. In the Eights territory, the noble family is conducting an inspection of Baltroden village with a large entourage. The poor, dirty villagers bow their heads in fear as the noble's procession passes by. An older man hugs a child, trying to shield her from the scene of oppression and misery all around. One of the concubines, named Madame Eights, complains about the foul smell coming from the commoners gathered there. The family's eldest son, Philip Eights, observes the scene with a serious and indifferent expression. The lord of the territory, Jason Eights, also complains about the stench of the place, calling it a miserable field. Philip informs his father that Johan isn't present and offers to send soldiers to find him. Jason Eights explodes with fury upon learning of his youngest son's absence during the important inspection. He yells that he doesn't care about Johan and that the boy can meet the same tragic end as his mother. With an expression of contempt, the lord of the territory continues to curse and belittle his absent son. Suddenly, Jason halts his horse, noticing a huge pile of hay at the village entrance. He questions what it is, and one of the villagers kneels, begging for forgiveness before explaining the situation. The villagers say they covered Johan's training traps because they thought they were ugly. Jason scoffs at the idea of Johan training and calls his son a pathetic insect as he looks at the hay. But as he looks closer, his expression changes when he sees what was hidden underneath. Beneath the hay, he finds several wooden logs with deep marks from punches and kicks all over them. Jason is shocked to see the number of destroyed logs and wonders what in the world this is. Back in the forest, Johan is down on the ground as the wolves surround him, biting him relentlessly. One of the beasts approaches to deliver the final blow, but stops suddenly as if something is wrong. Then Johan grabs the wolf's jaw and says that fighting with swords isn't really his style. With incredible strength, he throws the creature far away, putting the other animals on alert. The protagonist grins and says that now he'll fight his own way, calling the wolves his little cash machines. He knows that in this world, it's survival of the fittest, and to avoid becoming prey, he needs cash. And to get that cash, he needs something more as the pack moves in for the attack. He then clenches his fist tightly, preparing to show his true combat ability. What he needs is overwhelming strength, capable of transcending the limits of an ordinary human being. Joseph watches the scene, completely shocked and unable to understand what's happening. With a direct punch, Johan lands a solid hit on a wolf's face, which barely has time to react. The impact is so powerful that it sends several other wolves flying through the air with extreme ease. The young man grabs another animal by the neck, displaying a terrifying and colossal physical strength. In a quick and brutal scene, he delivers a final, decisive blow to the defenseless creature. The wolf's body falls lifeless to the ground. To the astonishment of Joseph, who watches from a distance. The older hunter can't believe his eyes and wonders where that incredible strength comes from. Johan smiles amidst the bodies of the wolves, thinking about how much money he'll get for all those pelts. A memory shows that he had to accept from an early age that life in this new world wouldn't be easy. His older brothers constantly mistreated him, calling him a bastard and humiliating him for not having a mother. Because they held a higher rank, they tormented and beat him whenever they felt like showing off. Lying on the ground, young Johan realized just how cruel this world was, and that no one would care about him. He then understood that the only person he could rely on to survive here was himself. With that in mind, he started thinking about what he would need to get by in this medieval world. Fortunately, the protagonist had a major advantage: the knowledge from his past life as a student. Because of this, his head held wisdom that people of that era couldn't even imagine. So, he decided to use all this knowledge to his advantage, starting with high-intensity training. The boy also created a balanced diet with superfoods, to the amazement of those who saw him eat. He also created an exercise regimen based on modern science and practiced martial arts up close. And so, his continuous training piled up over many years of dedication. After all that time, an older and stronger Johan could shatter tree trunks with a single punch. His determined expression showed the results of all his effort as he continued to train. The force of his blows was so absurd that he could rip an entire tree out of the ground. With each training session, his body demonstrated even more overwhelming strength, and he felt renewed. Amidst the destroyed logs, he wondered if this strength was a blessing or a new challenge in his life. Back in the present, in the forest, a growling sound echoes through the darkness after the intense battle. The protagonist breathes a sigh of relief, looking at his hand as he recovers from the fight against the beasts. He observes the wolves' bodies on the ground and concludes that this seems to be the last of the pack. Meanwhile, Joseph hugs little Dell, who is crying with relief at being saved from danger. Joseph sighs in relief, but still looks completely exhausted and shaken by the whole situation. He then turns to Johan and scolds him, saying his actions were very reckless and dangerous. But right after, the hunter is moved and thanks the young man for saving the girl without a second thought. However, the protagonist is in his own world, imagining which wolf pelt will fetch the most cash. He asks what Joseph said, and then turns to Dell to see if she got hurt anywhere. Suddenly, the little girl's eyes go wide, and an expression of pure terror takes over her face. Behind them, a giant shadow with red eyes appears and lets out a hair-raising growl. Johan and Joseph turn around, confused, while Dell covers her face with her hands, unable to watch. The creature shows its sharp teeth and its furious gaze in the darkness of the dense forest. A monstrous, enormous wolf emerges before Johan, appearing to be the leader of the pack he defeated. Joseph screams in complete panic, realizing they are facing a real monster. He grabs the girl and warns that they need to run, as only an army could handle that thing. But the protagonist smiles and turns to the creature, asking if it's the boss of this crew. He apologizes for taking out the monster's underlings and mentions their pelts are worth a lot. The giant beast stares at the young man with a look of pure hatred, its eyes glowing an intense red. Johan realizes the monster sees him as prey, and a confident smile appears on his face. The creature then opens its massive mouth and lets out a deafening roar that echoes throughout the forest. Unfazed, the protagonist charges toward the beast, saying it doesn't matter what it is. The young man picks up a giant rock from the ground and yells that this thing's pelt will be worth way more money. Then, with superhuman strength, he hurls the rock, which smashes right into the monster's head. The rock hits the monster square on, and it lets out a roar of pain and fury from the direct impact. But Johan yells in frustration because he scratched the animal's pelt, complaining that the price will drop now. With its red eyes glowing with hatred, the creature glares at the protagonist, growling furiously. Then the beast opens its mouth and lets out a powerful howl that seems to shake the entire forest. The sound is so intense that the protagonist covers his ears with his hands, feeling unbearable pain. Meanwhile, Joseph hugs the little girl tightly to try and protect her from the deafening noise. Johan grinds his teeth and writhes in pain, as the monster's howl seems to affect his mind directly. He feels dizzy and his vision starts to blur as he wonders what's happening to him. Suddenly, a strange vision of two warriors fighting with swords flashes abruptly in his mind. The scene is so intense and real that the young man screams in despair, feeling the pain of that ancient memory. Soon after, he collapses to the ground, panting and confused, wondering what just happened to him. Still a bit dizzy, he looks around and wonders where the monster that was in front of him went. To his surprise, the creature has simply vanished without a trace in the dark forest. He then spots Joseph and Dell on the ground, fast asleep, as if they had passed out. The protagonist approaches and realizes they are just sleeping, and that everyone is safe now. He doesn't know what happened but carries Joseph to head back, as other monsters might show up. The young man then hoists the hunter onto his shoulders and starts walking through the dark forest. As he walks, he laments not being able to take the wolf pelts, but promises to come back with a cart later. The night deepens, and the full moon lights their path through the trees of the gloomy forest. As he nears the village, he notices the lights are on and wonders if they're looking for Dell. He then starts fantasizing that his father would praise him and name him his successor in front of everyone. But he quickly dismisses the idea and thinks that maybe he can at least get a position in the guard to keep from starving. However, as he gets closer to the village, he notices something strange, and his expression changes completely. The light of a lit torch illuminates the darkness, revealing the presence of a large group of people. Suddenly, he comes face to face with his family's inspection party, with soldiers and horses everywhere. The protagonist is completely stunned, a look of shock on his face as he realizes the mess he's in. His older brother Philip furiously yells, asking where he's been during their father's inspection. The young man finally remembers the important event of the day and realizes he is totally screwed. Mounted on his horse, his father calls him an insolent brat with a look of pure contempt and rage. The lord of the territory then dismounts, his armored boot landing firmly on the ground. Johan places Joseph on the ground and tries to explain, saying he had an emergency, but his father doesn't want to hear it. Jezin tells him to shut his mouth immediately, while holding a huge, detailed axe in his hand. The patriarch threatens to split his son's head open for daring to ignore him, showing all his pent-up fury. The light from the torches held by the soldiers illuminates the tense scene between father and son in the middle of the night. Philip continues to yell at his younger brother, accusing him of disrespecting their father with his absence. It finally dawns on Johan, and he realizes he completely forgot about the inspection that day. His father insults him again, calling him an immature bastard and showing his complete disdain for him. The man approaches with heavy, threatening steps, showing that the situation is very serious. The protagonist tries to justify himself again, but is cut off before he can even start speaking, as Jezin raises his axe towards him. Jezin threatens his son with his axe, and yells that he's going to crush his arrogant head for ignoring him. The protagonist mentally complains that he barely survived all that, and now he has to listen to this without even getting the pelts. But with a smile, he realizes he can spin this situation into a great opportunity. So, Johan begins to explain, saying he wasn't absent on purpose, and was out saving people in the forest. At that moment, a man from the crowd shouts Dell's name and runs toward the unconscious little girl. With tears in his eyes, he hugs his daughter and thanks God that she's okay and safe in his arms. The man continues to cry with relief at having found his daughter safe and sound after searching for so long. Johan seizes the chance and explains that the girl was surrounded by wolves and he fought to save her. The villagers are shocked, and he says he fulfilled his duty as a knight's son by protecting them. With that, the young man bows respectfully and promises to continue doing his best for the estate's safety. He even asks for the position of captain of the guard, leaving his brother Philip with an angry expression. In his thoughts, the protagonist congratulates himself on his great performance and the self-promotion he just pulled off. But Jezin sarcastically calls him future captain, and asks where the wolves are, demanding proof. The young man is furious in his thoughts, as he didn't expect his father to ask for concrete evidence. Still, he tries to keep up the act and insists, with a forced smile, that he's not lying to anyone. He doubles down on the lie, saying he even encountered the legendary Great Dark Wolf, leaving some in shock. Jezen's face fills with rage, as the lie about the legendary creature was the last straw for him. With that, his father yells that his son dares to lie to his face and threatens to rip his mouth off. Johan starts to sweat and asks if his father wants a duel, offering to prove his skills right then and there. He didn't want to fight, because despite everything, Jezen was still his father. With a confident smirk, Jezen accepts the duel and says he wants to see just how skilled his son really is. He then orders the young man to raise his sword, and warns that the duel will be with weapons only. Johan has a look of shock and surprise, as he didn't expect that specific condition. In his thoughts, he curses his father for never teaching him how to use a weapon before demanding this. In the middle of the arena, the lord of the territory tells his son to draw his sword to begin the duel. The protagonist then shows the broken sword he used in the fight against the wolves. Irritating his father, Jezen orders Philip to lend his sword to his brother, and the young man agrees with some hesitation. As he hands over the weapon, Philip advises Johan to beg for forgiveness, as it's the only way to get out of this alive. But the young man refuses to apologize, believing he did nothing wrong and that a man doesn't run away. He then pushes his brother aside and says he hopes to learn a lot from this duel with his father. Jezen puts on his battle helmet, preparing for the fight that's about to begin between them. The protagonist believes that showing his skills will make his father acknowledge him, thus proving his worth. With a determined look, he focuses completely on the fight that will decide his future in this family. Suddenly, his father's eyes go wide, and a look of pure astonishment takes over his face. A monstrous red aura emanates from Johan's sword, and Jezen wonders what that is. The young man then charges and attacks with his sword, which clashes violently against his father's axe. The impact is so strong that the blade of Jezen's axe begins to shatter into several pieces. The force of the blow travels down the weapon and hits the lord of the territory, who grunts in pain from the shock. The impact continues to ripple, showing the immense power of the protagonist's attack against his father. Jezen is pushed back but digs his feet into the ground to keep from flying backward. Jezen grinds his teeth in rage, barely able to contain his fury at his youngest son's audacity. Completely enraged, he raises his axe and yells, calling his own son a useless parasite. Johan is hit squarely by the violent blow and feels the impact run through his entire body with pain. His brothers watch the scene, shocked, and realize their father is serious and might finish the young man off. The patriarch then yells that he never taught his son to fight because he'd be useless anyway. He continues to insult the boy, saying that no matter how hard he tries, he'll never surpass him. Jezen seems to go mad, screaming that the estate is his and no one will ever take it from his hands. Wounded, Johan wonders what's gotten into his father and if he's lost his mind from drinking, but he soon realizes that the blood running down his face is seriously messing with his vision. Suddenly, Philip shouts his younger brother's name with a look of desperation and concern. The protagonist is surprised to hear the shout and wonders about the reason for that unexpected reaction. He then lifts his face and glares at his father with a determined look, despite being at a disadvantage. The crowd of villagers watches the scene, completely horrified, unable to do a single thing. With his last bit of strength, Johan manages to stop the axe blade using what's left of his sword. The pressure is immense, and sparks fly everywhere as the two test their strength in the middle of the arena. But the young man's sword can't take it and breaks into pieces, leaving him completely disarmed. Kneeling on the ground, the protagonist admits his defeat, with the remains of the sword beside him. Jezen then approaches and tells his son to know his place and never challenge him again. With a threatening glare, he warns that if he sees him again, he'll really crush his head for good. The lord of the territory then turns his back on his son and walks away, leaving him alone and humiliated. Alone in the arena, Johan is surrounded by the crowd, who watches him in silence with pity in their eyes. In a more secluded spot, someone comments that what Gezen did to his son was very unfair and cruel. Inside a church, a tall, blond man complains indignantly about the treatment the young man received. Father Valberd says that a knight should have honor and questions how a father can treat his son that way. Meanwhile, Johan is being treated and says with a forced smile that he's fine and at least he survived. The priest continues to complain that Gezen was in full armor and probably drunk during the fight. The protagonist sighs and admits to himself that he never learned to fight with swords and is very weak. Valberd tries to comfort him, saying his father has a lot of battle experience and inherited the family's techniques. The priest mentions that a knight from the neighboring estate managed to defeat 300 servant soldiers on his own. Johan is shocked to learn that a single knight can be so strong and says that's incredible. He then reflects that fighting technique is important and that he underestimated his drunk father. Father Valberd hears the young man mention the Black Wolf, and his expression changes to one of surprise and fear. He grabs Johan by the shoulders and asks if it's true that he saw the legendary creature in the forest. The protagonist confirms it and says that Joseph and Dell also saw the monster before they passed out. The priest is shocked and starts to pray, thanking God, while the young man doesn't understand a thing. Valberd then grabs an old book from the shelf to show something important to the curious young man. He opens the book and explains that for a long time, black wolves have been considered a great taboo in the region. The book shows an image of a wolf carrying a person's body in its mouth in a macabre scene. The priests believe these creatures are an omen of ruin and destruction for those who encounter them. According to old stories, black wolves always appear, bringing sorrow and loss to the people. Johan is silent for a moment as he processes the information about the black wolves and their meaning. He doesn't really believe it, but thinks the wolf was a warning about the fight with his father, and the priest agrees. The priest smiles and tells him not to worry, as the stories about the wolves are just old legends. He believes God is helping him because he's a good person who puts others first. The protagonist gives an awkward smile and wonders if he's really a good person like Father Valberd thinks. In his thoughts, he admits that all he really cares about is making a lot of money to live well. Meanwhile, near the Eights Estate, in the barony of Brits, a scene of chaos and terror is unfolding. Amidst the fire and smoke, screams of despair echo everywhere as people beg for help. A mother hugs her child tightly and screams desperately for help in a moment of pure panic. But her plea is ignored, and something terrible is about to happen to the two helpless and frightened individuals. In a moment of cruelty, that family's life is brutally cut short without any mercy. One of the victims' hands falls lifelessly to the ground, showing the tragic end of that bloody night. Two knights are talking, and one wonders why people try to run when they're going to meet their end anyway. The other agrees with the cruelty of the situation, but shows no hint of remorse for what they've done. The mercenaries then pile up the victims' bodies, preparing to burn everything and erase the evidence. They don't care about the cruelty. They're just there to do a job and get paid in gold. In front of a large, flaming gate, a knight kneels before an imposing and mysterious figure. He informs his superior, named Karamov, that the mercenaries have finished the job and hands over the Brits family ring. The mysterious man holds the ring of the noble family that was completely annihilated on that night of terror. With a squeeze of his hand, he crushes the ring and speaks the Brits' family name with contempt in his voice. He complains that he had high expectations for Brits, but the knight didn't even last 2 attacks. Karamov then introduces himself as the Sword of the Holy Empire and the Emperor's representative. He says he is also the seal collector and will punish all corrupt nobles on His Majesty's orders. The mysterious warrior promises endless gold and honor to all who stand with the Emperor. With a gesture, he orders his men to advance and destroy everything in their path without mercy. His soldiers, with red eyes and wolf shields, smile and announce that the Eights Estate is next. Back in the protagonist's strange vision, the two warriors continue their intense and deadly battle. The mysterious knight blocks a blow with ease and glares at his opponent with a look of contempt. The warrior in black armor seems to be much stronger and more skilled than his adversary in combat. With a swift and precise movement, he manages to disarm his enemy, leaving him completely vulnerable. The opponent's sword flies through the air as the knight prepares for the final, decisive blow. In a single strike, the warrior's head is separated from his body quickly and brutally. The knight's body falls lifelessly to the ground as blood gushes everywhere in the battle arena. His helmet rolls across the ground, showing the tragic and lonely end of that bloody confrontation. From under the helmet, a lifeless face is revealed, leaving the viewer shocked by the scene. The camera zooms in and reveals that the defeated warrior was actually the protagonist of the story. Johan then wakes up suddenly with a scream of despair, sweating and panting in his bed. He sits up in bed and tries to calm down, realizing it was all just a nightmare. The young man puts a hand to his head and takes a deep breath, still shaken by the intensity of the bad dream. Ever since he saw the black wolf, he's been having the same nightmare for days on end, unable to rest. He remembers the priest's words about the black wolf being an omen of doom and misfortune. The image of the creature howling at the red moon continues to haunt his thoughts. The young man tries to push these thoughts away, remembering the priest said it was just an old legend. He also remembers that the priests call the creature the sign of Demis, which makes him even more tense. The protagonist laughs at himself, saying it's not like he did anything bad to the wolf to deserve so much bad luck. He then remembers the scene where he smashed the monster's head with a giant rock and feels a little embarrassed. With a sheepish smile, he admits to himself that maybe he provoked the creature's wrath just a little bit. The young man then decides to put these useless thoughts aside and focus on his training to get stronger. On a hill, with the sun setting, he begins his exercise routine with determination and focus. Suddenly, a voice calls him a useless brat and interrupts him during his heavy workout at the end of the day. It's his older brothers, who remind him of their father's words to keep a low profile and stay quiet. They continue to mock him, calling him cocky for still thinking he's strong, even after getting his butt kicked. The two accuse him of being all bark and no bite, saying that chopping wood won't make him any stronger. They scoff at his skills, saying that breaking a log is just a low-level party trick. With a smile on his face, Johan listens silently to the taunts about him never being able to join the guard. He then clenches his fist and focuses on the tree in front of him, preparing to show his strength. With a single punch, he shatters the tree trunk into several pieces with impressive force. His brothers' eyes bulge and their jaws drop in shock, unable to believe what they just saw. The protagonist breaks the tree in half with his blow, showing the result of his intense training. He then turns to his brothers with an evil grin and invites them to repeat what they just said. Scared, the two brothers scram, promising to tattle to their dad about everything that happened. Johan sighs and calls them pathetic idiots for not thinking about how they'll support themselves in the future. He then decides not to worry about others anymore and get back to his training to become stronger. Suddenly, a voice from behind interrupts him, saying that what his brothers said about their father was true. It's Philip, who approaches and confirms that their father has no intention of appointing him to any position. The protagonist isn't surprised and says at least he wasn't sent to the gallows, which is a relief. The older brother asks if he's not disappointed, but Johan says he'll find another way to make a living. Philip then reveals that their father is afraid of his younger brother, which is why he treats him with such contempt. Johan falls silent, and his expression turns serious upon hearing his brother's shocking revelation. Philip explains that his strength is a threat to their father, who prefers obedient and submissive sons. He continues, saying their father wants sons like him, who obey him, and that Johan is too independent. Jason believes that one day, his son's strength will take everything from him, just as he did to his own father. The young man is surprised by the story but soon laughs it off, calling the whole thing a load of nonsense. Philip then asks a servant to bring a bag and prepares to give something to his younger brother. The servant opens the bag and reveals its contents to the protagonist, who is curious to see what it is. Johan's eyes widen in surprise as he wonders what's inside the bag. The older brother explains that it's a coat and a chestplate of armor that were stored in the castle. He says he's not foolish enough to dismiss someone capable, and that he's not like their father. With a determined look, Johan listens attentively to his older brother Philip's words. Philip promises that when he becomes the lord of the estate, he will appoint him as the captain of the Eights Guard. Johan yells back that he never starts trouble in the first place, defending himself against his older brother's accusations. Philip then throws something to him and turns to leave, leaving the protagonist alone with the gift. The older brother walks away with his servant as the sun sets on the horizon in a beautiful scene. The protagonist watches the two leave, and a strange feeling suddenly comes over him. He then looks at the armor's chestplate and realizes it's the exact same one from his nightmare. With wide eyes, he wonders if wearing that armor will lead him to the same tragic end as in his dream. But for some reason, he feels he can overcome this fate and change the course of his story. Even without any proof, he trusts his instincts and decides to wear the gear he was given. He puts on the armor and cape, feeling stronger and more prepared for whatever comes next. The sun sets completely, and night arrives, bringing new challenges and adventures for the young man. In a local tavern, the villagers chat excitedly about the recent events in the village. One man tells everyone that Johan is a purer and just hero who saved Del and Joseph from the wolves. Others agree, saying he's far more noble than his father, who is a drunk and a womanizer. A man in a hood listens to the conversation and chuckles quietly while holding his mug of ale. Another villager grips his mug so tightly that it shatters as he agrees with the criticism of the Lord. Del's father then announces that drinks are on him and that everyone can drink as much as they want. He raises his mug and toasts to young Johan, the just knight who saved his daughter from danger. One of the men asks the hooded stranger who he is, as he's never seen him around before. The mysterious figure comments sarcastically that the villagers aren't afraid to speak ill of their lord in front of a stranger. The two men get nervous and are left speechless, realizing the blunder they just made with the newcomer. With a sinister smile, the hooded man says their story is interesting and asks for more details. The two villagers are completely terrified by the threatening gaze of the mysterious figure in the tavern. He demands to know more about Johan Eitz. As the night deepens in Baltroden village, with an air of tension, the protagonist walks through the village, whistling happily and dreaming of his future as a captain. He imagines that when Philip becomes the Lord, his golden path to glory will finally be open. Suddenly, he stops and looks to the side, as if he noticed something strange in the middle of the street. He spots a drunk man passed out on the ground and thinks that a future captain can't just ignore a citizen. With a smile, he approaches to help and offers to take the man home. But as he touches the man, he feels something cold on his neck, and his expression changes to one of surprise. The supposed drunk is actually an assassin who attacks him by surprise with a dagger to his neck. The protagonist is shocked and frozen by the unexpected attack in the middle of the village street. A small wooden house in the distance seems to be the only refuge in the darkness of that dangerous night. With a quick move, Johan manages to break free from the attack and back away from the mysterious assassin. He wonders if the attack was his father's doing, but dismisses the idea, as he would have come personally. He then thinks of his stepmother and Philip, but also doubts his brother would do something like this to him. The young man gets frustrated that he can't figure out who sent the assassin to finish him off. He turns to the hooded man and asks what he wants with a serious and determined expression. The protagonist offers everything he has in exchange for his life, but the assassin doesn't seem interested. The mysterious man replies coldly that he already has more than enough money for what he needs. Johan becomes desperate because if money isn't the motive, he has no idea what the assassin wants. The assassin then says he will ask young Johan a question and threatens him with his sharp dagger. He warns that if he doesn't like the answer, he won't hesitate to act. The man's dagger is stained with something dark, and he presses it against the protagonist's neck. Johan gets nervous and wonders if the man will eliminate him if he answers the question incorrectly. He remembers a job interview from his past life and prepares to give the perfect answer. The assassin then gets ready to ask the question, and the young man musters the courage to listen and respond. With a mysterious look from under his hood, the man leans in to ask his decisive question. He compliments the protagonist's physique and asks if he's really the son of that pig, Jason Eights. Johan is completely floored by the question and doesn't know how to react to such a strange inquiry. He grinds his teeth in anger and wonders what he should say to save his life in that moment. Very nervously, he replies that sometimes a lion can be born from a line of pigs. The assassin is silent for a moment, making the protagonist even more tense about the situation. Johan wonders if he gave the wrong answer, and if his fate is already sealed because of it. Suddenly, the hooded man starts laughing loudly and creepily, leaving the young man confused. The assassin says he liked the answer, but refuses to let him go, making him desperate. With a sinister smile, he says that from this moment on, Johan Eights belongs to him, and no one else. The protagonist is in shock, unable to understand what the mysterious man means by those words. We find out the assassin's name is Kegel, the poison master of the Nisos Guild, and the greatest assassin in the Empire. He perfected his swordsmanship through countless missions, and became known as the Venomous Serpent. However, Kegel had a serious problem. He couldn't find a successor to inherit his techniques. He searched everywhere, but only found useless insects who could never truly succeed him. Some even showed potential but were too attached to honor and refused to become assassins. One knight refused to learn the techniques, saying he'd rather meet his end right there than stain his honor. Without hesitation, Kegel granted the man's wish and eliminated him without any mercy in the middle of the arena. More than 30 heirs of knightly families met the same end at the hands of the master assassin. Impatient, he visited the Empire's witch in search of a solution to his succession problem. The witch said that the disciple he was looking for was in a small, forgotten rural territory. She revealed that he was one of the sons of the drunk and womanizing lord of Eights Castle. Kegel doubted his successor would be in such a miserable place where one coin could buy half the land. The witch laughed and said she would return his money if her prophecy didn't come true as promised. The assassin accepted the bet, as he knew you couldn't just take money from a witch. He decided to believe her because he had already wasted too much time and had nowhere else to look. But even upon arriving at the Eights estate, doubt about the prophecy still tormented him. He decided that if he didn't like the boy, he would eliminate him on the spot without a second thought. Back in the present, Kegel says he has no more time to waste and that Johan will be his successor. He gives the young man the choice to learn his swordsmanship or meet his end right there at his hands. The protagonist is shocked by the unexpected proposal and doesn't know how to react to the situation. In a moment of desperation and confusion, he shouts and asks how much he needs to pay to learn. Kegel gets irritated and yells back that he's not accepting money for the swordsmanship lesson. Johan's eyes start glittering with greed when he realizes he's about to get free lessons from a master. With his eyes shining, the young man says he's waited his whole life for someone like the master assassin. Kegel then warns him that his swordsmanship is that of an assassin, not an honorable knight. He warns that learning his techniques will mark him as a disgrace to his family for the rest of his life. But Johan yells that he doesn't care about honor or shame and begs the man to teach him. The assassin accepts, saying he's never met a brat like this in his entire life of searching. The protagonist then remembers something and asks his new master about an important detail. With eyes glittering for money, he asks if he'll get an allowance if he learns the lessons well. Kegel stares at the young man with a serious expression, thinking that this kid really is different from all the others. At Eights Castle, the lord of the territory prepares to leave on his horse with a few guards. He announces that the inspection is over and that he'll be gone for a while, leaving his wife and eldest son. Philip says his goodbyes and states that he'll take care of the castle while his father is away on business. Johan's stepmother says that no matter how much her stepson fights, the castle will one day be hers, but Philip cuts her off, saying the next lord of the castle will be him and no one else in his family. Jezen complains that he's tired of their bickering and tells them to do whatever they want. The eldest son then reminds him that Johan still hasn't returned and asks what they should do. The lord grinds his teeth in anger, just hearing the name of the youngest son who defied him. Philip is afraid of his father's reaction, but maintains his composure and waits for a clear answer. Jezen then says not to waste time on that brat, because his life doesn't matter to him. The eldest son agrees and apologizes to his father, showing his obedience and submission. In his thoughts, Philip wonders where Johan is and what he's doing at that moment. In the forest, Kegel says he needs to check the young man's skills before starting the training. The protagonist asks to borrow a sword, explaining that he breaks his own too often in fights. The assassin thinks the boy is reckless and that he doesn't like anything about him, considering the idea of eliminating him. With the sword in hand, he asks his new disciple if he's ready for the skill test. Johan confirms with an excited smile and prepares to show his full potential to the master. The two face off in the dark forest, and the young man assumes a very strange and clumsy fighting stance. Kegel sighs and thinks that stance is terrible for a knight's son and decides to eliminate him. The boy then asks if he can fight however he wants, and his master authorizes him to use any method. With a sinister smile, Kegel says he can use fists, rocks, or blades, as it makes no difference. The protagonist then breaks the sword he borrowed with his bare hands, shocking the master. The sound of the blade breaking echoes through the forest as shards fly everywhere. Kegel's eyes widen in surprise, unable to believe the boy's absurd strength. At that moment, he realizes all his doubts about the witch's prophecy were baseless. The sword shards reflect the moonlight as the master assassin stares at his new disciple. He realizes the young man is monstrously strong and that the witch was right about his potential. With a confident smile, Johan prepares to attack using only his fists and his raw strength. The full moon illuminates the scene as the sword shards fall slowly around the two of them. The assassin is shocked by the air pressure generated by the boy's punch and braces for impact. He knows that if he's hit by that blow, his bones and muscles will be completely crushed. And so, Kegel understands that he's not fighting a human, but a wild lion. With eyes blazing with fury, Johan charges forward with his fist, ready to attack. However, the master assassin moves with incredible speed and easily dodges the blow. Kegel uses his serpent technique, moving in a fluid and unpredictable way, confusing the protagonist. The young man is shocked by the master's movements and can't predict where he'll go. The assassin then attacks him with the flat of the blade, hitting him squarely with a precise strike. Johan falls to the ground from the impact and cries out in pain, feeling the force of his new master's attack. He gets up with difficulty as Kegel watches him from a distance with a serious, cold expression. The master comments that he hit him with the flat of the blade, and that he's surprised he didn't pass out. He praises the boy's resilience, and says that if he had been born 1,000 years earlier, he would have been a legendary hero. The assassin then warns him of a critical weakness that could cost him his life in the future. With a serious look, he warns that if the young man doesn't fix this flaw, he will certainly meet his end. Johan is shocked by the revelation and wonders what his master means by that warning. Kegel explains that the protagonist can't control his strength and that it will be his undoing one day. The young man doubts the claim, saying it's not like he's attacking himself with his own strength. The master then shows a set of daggers and prepares for a new challenge for his disciple. He takes his sword and challenges the boy to attack him again with all his strength and power. With a challenging look, he promises that if the young man manages to break his sword instead of his own, the protagonist's eyes glitter with greed at the word gold, and his expression changes instantly. He accepts the challenge on the spot and runs toward the master, yelling for him to keep his promise. The young man then prepares to attack, using a tree as an improvised weapon. The clash between the two weapons is violent, and sparks fly everywhere from the force of the impact. The protagonist feels the recoil of the blow and grinds his teeth against the force his master is using. Something trickles from his eye, and he realizes the impact of the fight is taking a toll on his body. The young man remembers his fight with his father and realizes the situation is very similar to before. Kegel then says the boy lost to his own strength and that he needs to learn to control it. He warns him that if he doesn't learn to control his power, he will meet a tragic and inevitable end. The master throws a blade fragment that embeds itself in the disciple's armor as a test of skill. With a determined look, Johan understands that he needs to learn to control his strength to survive. Kegel observes him and says that when he learns to control his power, incredible things will be possible. With the sword's sheath, the master delivers a quick and precise blow to the protagonist's armor. The young man barely has time to react, and the sheath cuts through the armor as if it were a sharp blade. He is shocked to realize his master managed to cut his armor with just the sheath. The assassin explains that when you have control of your force, you can cut anything, even without a blade. With a sinister smile, he says he can hardly imagine how powerful the boy will become. The master then says that's enough talk, and it's time to begin the real training. He warns that it will be difficult, and that the young man might not even survive the learning process. With a threatening look, he asks if the disciple is ready for the challenge ahead. Johan confirms with a confident smile, saying he's more than ready for the training. At Eight's castle, life goes on as usual while the protagonist begins his training journey. Another young man in a cloak walks through the village, observing the residents and the local activity. Tired and bruised, Johan continues his intense training with his new assassin master. He thinks he's learning to hold back, but he still finds it very difficult to control his strength. Suddenly, he looks to the side and sees something that catches his attention in the middle of the castle courtyard. He spots a group of elven soldiers with armor and shields standing in front of a gate. The protagonist approaches and asks who they are, but one of the guards stops him from passing. Johan gets annoyed and questions the guard's authority to give him orders in this place. With a confident smirk, the soldier prepares to reveal his identity and that of his group. He says they are the Wolves of Akiton, the mercenary guild directly linked to His Majesty. The protagonist gets excited to hear they're mercenaries and asks about the pay. The soldiers laugh and say they earn 2 gold coins per job, which is much more than a captain makes. They also say that what matters is skill, not the size of your muscles, to be a good mercenary. Johan's eyes glitter with greed as he thinks about the money and considers a career change. A mysterious man in golden armor observes the young man's interaction with the mercenaries from afar. The imposing figure approaches the protagonist with firm steps and an intimidating presence. Johan's eye reflects the image of the mysterious warrior, and he feels a shiver down his spine. A strange feeling comes over him, and his hand instinctively goes to the hilt of his sword. He prepares to draw the weapon, as if facing a deadly and powerful enemy. The young man is confused and wonders why he's reacting this way to the mysterious man. One of the elven knights yells at him for daring to draw his sword in front of Lord Karamav. But the mysterious figure stops him and says it's all right. Mounted on a white horse in golden armor, Karamov stares at the young man with an intimidating gaze. With his glowing red eyes, he asks who the boy is who dared to challenge him with a sword. Johan starts to sweat and gets nervous in the imposing presence of the mysterious knight. Surrounded by the soldiers, he introduces himself as Johan of House 8, trying to stay calm. The warrior in golden armor raises a hand to his helmet, preparing to reveal his true identity. He then removes his helm and shows his face to the protagonist, who stares at him with fear and curiosity. The man introduces himself as Karamov, a knight of the Holy Empire's Imperial Guard. Johan realizes his reaction was instinctive, and that he put his hand on his sword without even thinking. He's never felt anything like it, not when he saw the Black Wolf, or when his father tried to eliminate him. Karamov's killing intent is so suffocating that the young man feels completely paralyzed with fear. It's as if he's a helpless rabbit facing a relentless and very powerful predator. He feels like prey before a top hunter, and sweat drips down his face. With a cold, authoritative voice, the elven knight tells the protagonist to get out of his way immediately. The young man continues to sweat, his body trembling with fear before the warrior's overwhelming aura. A chill runs down his spine, and he is completely in shock from the man's presence. The mercenaries mock him and tell him to be more careful next time he runs into someone. One of the elven soldiers laughs and says he doesn't know if there will be a next time for the scared boy. A knight in training named Jane asks Karamov if it's okay to leave the young man there. With a smirk, he says he doesn't want to cause a scene on such a fine day. He then enters the castle with his men, leaving Johan behind, alone and confused by it all. The protagonist remains silent, thinking about the sudden arrival of a knight of the Emperor. Philip is shocked to hear of Karamov's arrival and rushes to greet him in the castle courtyard. He wonders why such an important figure would come to a forgotten place like this. Out of breath, he introduces himself as the next Lord of House Eights and asks the reason for the visit. Johan's stepmother appears with her son, John, and compliments the Emperor's knight on his good looks. With a seductive smile, she says she would have married later if she'd known he existed. She then invites him into the castle, but Karamov seems to completely ignore her presence. Philip gets annoyed by the woman's attitude and wonders if the knight is even listening to him. The warrior in golden armor then enters the castle and sits on the Lord's throne without permission. With a cold, authoritative voice, he asks where Gezin, the lord of these lands, is. Philip and his stepmother are shocked by the knight's audacity and don't know how to react. The young heir tries to reprimand him for addressing his father so disrespectfully, but the stepmother interrupts him, saying there's nothing wrong with it, as he is the greatest knight in the empire. Philip realizes the woman is trying to use the opportunity to promote her own son. Karamov then yells for everyone to shut up and get out of his sight immediately. He asks for a drink and says he'll wait for Lord Gezin inside the castle. With his sword in hand, he waits patiently for the arrival of the Lord of House Eights for a settling of scores. Meanwhile, Johan continues his intense training, honing his skills with his master. Karamov takes off his helm, revealing his confident face as he waits for the confrontation to come. The two warriors seem to be on a collision course, and their fates will cross soon. During training, Kegel yells at his disciple to focus and not get distracted. The young man grinds his teeth in pain as he tries to dodge his master's swift and precise attacks. A small cut appears on his neck, showing he couldn't dodge the blow in time. The assassin warns him that if the daggers had been poisoned, he would already be lifeless. The protagonist apologizes and says something feels off. As knights of the Emperor have arrived in the village, he finds it strange that outside knights are controlling the entrance to the castle that belongs to his family. With a serious expression, he says it makes no sense for them to close the gates and control access. Kegel asks what he can do about it, even if the situation is suspicious and strange. The master explains that Karamov is the strongest warrior on the continent and the central power of the empire. Johan is surprised and asks if the elven knight is stronger than his assassin master. The assassin is silent for a moment, a serious and thoughtful expression on his face. He then admits that if he had to face Karamov, he would run without a second thought. The protagonist says, "You only know the outcome of a fight after it's over," but gets a smack from his master. Kegel yells at him to know his place, saying he can barely control his own strength. He calls him a brat who doesn't even know the basics of swordsmanship and has no chance against the knight. But with a determined look, the young man says he will train and prepare for whatever comes. The master sighs and accepts his stubborn disciple's challenge, telling him to get back to training. The two then begin to train intensely, the clash of their blades echoing through the forest. Kegel attacks him repeatedly, yelling for him to keep trying without giving up on the training. The young man gives his all to keep up with his master's movements and learn his techniques. Kegel continues to pressure him with fast and precise attacks, testing his disciple's limits. With a furious expression, The master yells for the young man to keep trying without stopping to rest. The protagonist wonders why he can't hit his master, even with all his raw strength. He complains that he can't even cut the sword's sheath and feels frustrated with his lack of skill. The assassin then teaches him about the flow of force and how to concentrate it at the tip of the sword for a strike. He tells the young man not to swing the weapon blindly, but to transfer the force to the blade's tip. As time and training go on, Johan begins to understand what it means to control his strength. Kegel notices that the sound of the boy's sword is getting sharper and is surprised by his progress. The training continues intensely, and the two exchange blows in a deadly dance in the dark forest. The protagonist feels he's finally getting the hang of it and prepares for a decisive strike. With the right amount of force, he concentrates all his energy at the tip of the sword for the attack. His eyes glow with an intense blue light as he prepares to show his new power to his master. Kegel notices the change in the young man and senses the next blow will be dangerous if he doesn't defend himself. The two then charge at each other in a clash of blades and assassination techniques. With a single precise strike, Johan finally manages to cut the tip of his master's sword sheath. With an ear-to-ear grin, he celebrates the achievement and yells that he managed to cut it. He says he finally got the hang of it and that it wasn't as hard as it seemed at the beginning of the training. Kegel watches him in silence, thinking it must have been just a lucky shot from the boy. The master then calls his disciple for a new challenge, preparing to test him once more. With his sword in hand, he warns that this time he won't hold back and tells him to attack again. The protagonist uses his master's serpent technique and attacks him with an impressive blue aura. Kegel is startled by the young man's skill and dodges the blow with a backward leap at the last second. Johan celebrates his victory, jumping for joy at having bested his master once again in training. The assassin is shocked and wonders what kind of kid this is who learns so quickly. He only taught him to control his force, but the boy is already using the secret technique, Serpent's Tongue. The young man perfectly absorbed a technique he had seen only once, on the day they met, and to the master's astonishment, he uses it more perfectly than the creator of the technique himself. Kegel is silent for a moment, processing the absurd talent of his new and only disciple. His experience tells him that unless a miracle happens, he will no longer be able to defeat this boy. The master of the Empire's strongest guild sighs and mutters that his disciple is a total monster. Meanwhile, the protagonist happily celebrates, having learned the technique and secured his livelihood. Kegel then announces that his teachings are over and that he will leave the forest at dawn. The young man is surprised and asks if it's already over, as he's barely gotten the hang of using the sword. The master reluctantly admits that his disciple has already become stronger than him in less than a week. He says he is satisfied that his swordsmanship won't disappear and tells the boy to live as he wishes. The assassin says his goodbyes and tells the young man he worked hard to reach this level of power. The protagonist asks if he's really leaving, and the master confirms, saying he never stays in one place for long. Around the campfire, Kegel says it's not because he's an assassin, but because of his nature. The boy then asks if he knows anything about sinister omens, like the black wolf he encountered. He tells him about the encounter with the creature, and about the recurring nightmare, where he loses his head. The protagonist says that when the master appeared, he thought he was the omen of his demise. Kegel replies that bad luck has no fixed form, and that if he had eliminated him, that would have been the sign. Around the campfire, the assassin prepares to give some advice to his disciple before leaving. He advises him to find a weapon suitable for his strength, like one made of Danis steel. This steel is a legendary, magic-infused metal that can only be found in ancient ruins. Since its forging method was lost, weapons made from it are extremely rare and valuable. The young man asks if it's expensive, and his master says he couldn't afford it, even if he saved his whole life. Johan doesn't understand the recommendation, but the master says he just wanted to show him his pathetic situation. Kegel then advises him to run if he sees someone using a Danis steel weapon, even from a distance. The young man agrees and says he'll keep that advice in mind so as not to underestimate his opponents. The assassin then gets up and prepares to leave, leaving the protagonist alone in the forest. He gives one last piece of advice to the boy, telling him not to fight opponents he can't beat. If a fight is unavoidable, the master says to use any means necessary to win without fail. With a serious look, the young man listens to his master's words and commits them to memory. Kegel then says farewell with one last request, that his only disciple does not meet his end. The assassin's main lesson is for the boy to run, if it's dangerous, and eliminate, if he can't avoid it. With his hands clasped, Johan promises to remember his master's words and survive at all costs. Meanwhile, at Eight's castle, the night continues with an atmosphere of tension and mystery in the air. A woman asks Karamov if the drink is to his liking while he sits on the throne. The overnight complains about the taste and throws the goblet away, shattering it against the wall. Karamov says the only drink better than that is in Lord Gezen's chambers and laments the situation. Johan's stepmother invites him to a cozier room, but he completely ignores her. With a seductive smile, she insists, saying the Lord's room is very comfortable and he won't regret it. She suggests the two could have a wonderful time together, but the knight doesn't seem interested. With a cold, sharp voice, he tells the woman to disappear from his sight and leave him alone. The stepmother is shocked by the rejection and tries to justify herself, saying they don't have much time. Karamov informs her that Lord Gezen will arrive late at night, and his eyes glow with a red light. With a sinister smile, he says he was getting tired of waiting and is going to have some fun. The Elven Knight then reveals his true intentions and prepares for the entertainment known as slaughter. Philip hears the screams from outside the room and is terrified by what's happening in the castle. Back in the forest, Johan feels something strange in the air, and a bad feeling suddenly comes over him. With wide eyes, he wonders what that smoke and fire he sees on the distant horizon is. He then spots the village completely in flames and wonders why the place is on fire. Meanwhile, our boy's dad, Jason, returns home and wonders what in the world is going on. One of his men then says the flames look intense and that he should head back right away. Without a second thought, he spurs his horse to gallop as fast as it can. And just like that, he comes flying up to the castle gates, ready to find out what happened. However, the elven guards out front just mock him, calling the guy a slowpoke and pig lord. They tell him to hurry up because Lord Karamov's patience isn't exactly endless. As soon as the gates open, Jason's eyes go wide with pure shock and terror, because the castle courtyard is packed with bodies strewn all over the brick ground. On top of that, you can see the desperation on the faces of the victims who never stood a chance. Utterly horrified by the scene, the Lord can barely speak and asks what this is all about. Suddenly, a giant foot in golden armor stumps down hard on the ground in front of him. It was the knight Karamov, who coldly says that Jason has finally shown up, and he's late. Jason breaks into a cold sweat, speechless, as he tightly grips the handle of his axe, until he explodes with rage and yells, asking what the heck Karamov is doing there. The knight then accuses Jason of plotting an attack and treason against the emperor, and because of that, he declares that the Ease family will be completely wiped out. Jason yells that this is ridiculous, and that it's all just a purge to frame him. He then challenges the knight, asking who he thinks he is to make something like that happen. Unfazed, Karamov simply ignores him and gives an order to sound the trumpet. And then he orders them to recover the family seal and purge the entire territory. With the order given, the army of elves charges forward to wipe the territory off the map. Right after, the entire village begins to catch fire in a scene of pure destruction. Amid the flames, an elven soldier approaches a kneeling Father Valberg and calls him cruel. Then the soldier questions him about the Lord's illegitimate son and threatens to end his life. But just as the soldier raises his sword to finish the priest, our boy appears out of nowhere, and with a swift move, Johan defends the priest, blocking the attack with his sword. Father Valberg is in shock, with the soldier's sword just inches from his neck, and as he looks up, he recognizes our hero, who also calls him by name. Johan then asks what's going on, and the priest says the Emperor's army has gone nuts. He also adds that Lord Jason has likely already met the same tragic fate. Our protagonist is completely floored by the news that even his father might be gone. Meanwhile, the flames continue to consume the village's wooden houses. Valbert says they want to burn everything, and Joan says they need to get to the castle fast. Suddenly, our boy hears a familiar voice and stops in his tracks to look around, and walking a bit further, he finds a child on the ground, calling his name through her tears. He gets closer and asks if she's Dell, the little girl he saved from the wolves. Relieved that she's safe, Johan says it's dangerous and tells her to get out of there quickly. However, in that same instant, his eyes widen as he notices something awful behind the girl. Dell's father was hit by an arrow while protecting his daughter, and she screams for him. Our protagonist is then frozen with shock and fury at the sight of that scene. Our hero then remembers Dell's father, a simple man who just wanted to protect his daughter. And now he sees the tragic result of that cowardly attack on the village. On top of that, he remembers another family that lived happily and peacefully in the village. But that peace was shattered, and they all met a tragic and violent end. He also recalls the men who were toasting in the tavern, celebrating life. But now, their bodies lie lifeless on the ground. Seeing all of this, our protagonist clenches his teeth, feeling the rage build inside him. And upon seeing Dell's small hand on her father, he makes a crucial decision. He then turns to the girl and asks her to stay with Father Valbert for safety. Right after, our hero stands up and starts walking into the middle of the chaos. The priest then yells desperately, telling him he can't go and that he needs to get out of there. But our protagonist stops walking and completely ignores the priest's warning. He then raises his head and sees something awful on a standard stuck in the ground. Because his father Jason's head is on display there for everyone to see the scene. A sign then informs them that the Duke was finished for treason against the Emperor. It also warns that anyone who touches the body without permission will face the same punishment. Our boy stands in silence, processing the loss of his father and everyone in the village. On the other side, an elven soldier spots him and asks what that illegitimate guy is doing there. Their leader then scoffs, thinking he had run away, and asks if he came back to meet his end. But without saying a word, our hero charges forward and strikes a blow. With a swift move, he attacks Karamov, but the knight parries with his own sword. The impact of the blades is so strong that sparks fly everywhere in the fight. Then, our protagonist's sword starts to crack under the knight's force, and unable to withstand the pressure, the blade shatters into several pieces. Karamov then seizes the opportunity and attacks him with a powerful blow, sending him flying. Our hero then rolls on the ground, but gets back up quickly, ready to continue the fight. He then rushes toward the enemy with a determined and furious look in his eyes. Karamov smiles sinisterly and says that the fight is quite entertaining for him. Our protagonist then grabs another sword from a fallen soldier and goes back on the attack. He uses the serpent technique he learned from his master to strike the enemy, and with a quick movement, he attacks with both swords at the same time. However, Karamov manages to block the attack with his Danis steel sword. Once again, our boy's swords can't handle the pressure and break. The knight then attacks with a series of swift and precise strikes. He uses several swords that float around him to attack our hero from all sides. With a final move, Karamov brings the swords together and launches them with all his might. The attack hits a stone statue that was behind our boy square on, and the statue is completely obliterated by the power of the knight's attack. In the end, Karamov says that the fight was very amusing for him. He then finishes by saying it was so good it doesn't even compare to a lightning strike. With a powerful blow, one of the elven soldiers is sent flying from the impact. Karamov then says that the fight is turning out to be really fun for him. With a sinister grin, he asks our hero to entertain him a little more. Then he yells out, contemptuously calling our boy a bastard of the Ease family. Despite being disarmed, our protagonist gets up with the hilt of his sword in hand. Karamov then prepares to attack again with his giant, golden sword. With a swift move, he strikes our hero's chest with a direct blow. Our boy tries to defend himself with what's left of his sword, but it's useless. The blow is so strong that he's thrown far back with no chance to defend, and so Johan falls to the ground once more, completely defeated and wounded. The two stare each other down from a distance, while our hero tries to recover from the blow. Suddenly, the knight notices something strange and looks down at his armor. He wonders if his legendary Danis armor is actually cracked. With wide eyes, he can't believe our boy managed to pull off such a feat, because for a human to break Danis steel should be completely impossible. Angrily, he then asks who the heck this bastard is who dares to challenge him. Meanwhile, our protagonist picks up two swords from the fallen soldiers on the ground. With both swords in hand, he charges to attack the knight once again. The knight can hardly believe the power he's feeling coming from the young man, and with a mighty blow, our hero unleashes a few attacks on him. Karamov then calls our hero a mindless brute who just swings his sword without thinking, and with a single blow, he easily defends himself from our boy's attack. Our protagonist uses all his strength, but the knight doesn't even budge from the impact. Johan then uses the serpent technique to take a step back and reposition himself. Karamov realizes his prediction was right, and that the kid doesn't know how to block properly. He understands that our boy is fighting on pure instinct, without any refined technique. With a serious look, he realizes the kid is dangerous and needs to end the fight quickly. He then prepares to strike the moment our hero tries another attack. Our protagonist then uses his father's banner to distract the Golden Knight. The red banner falls to the ground, and our boy seizes the chance to advance. He stomps hard on the banner, leaving the elven soldiers absolutely furious. Their leader shouts and orders all soldiers to attack and finish our hero. With his eyes glowing with rage, our protagonist readies himself for battle, and with a single slash, he cuts off the head of a soldier who screams in terror. The soldier doesn't even have time to react, and his body falls lifeless to the ground. Another soldier charges forward screaming, but our hero mercilessly cuts him in half. The elven soldier screams in pain as our boy continues his rampage of revenge. And so, our protagonist walks through the fire and destruction of the village. He then wonders why he's doing this and heading toward the castle. Meanwhile, Father Valberg hugs little Dell and says they need to get out of there. He then thinks that going to the castle now would only lead to a meaningless demise. Suddenly, he hears his name and turns to see who's calling him. To his surprise, it's his brother Philip, who's alive but severely wounded. Our boy then approaches and asks why he came back to this place. Philip tells him to run, because staying there will only lead him to meet his end. With his last ounce of strength, he removes his helmet and tries to give something to our hero. With a wounded face, our protagonist holds the helmet his brother gave him, and with one final breath, Philip passes on, leaving our boy all alone. Our protagonist then remembers his father's words about knowing his place, and he also recalls his master's advice to run when things get dangerous. He knows the Emperor's Knight is a formidable opponent, and that his master had warned him, but he remembers another important lesson he learned from his assassin master. If a fight is unavoidable, he must finish his opponent without fail. With that memory, he tells himself that now is the time to act, and with a newfound determination, our protagonist gets up, ready for battle. He then enters the castle alone, with his armor and sword in hand. The elven soldiers see him and are surprised by his sudden appearance. One of them then asks what that bastard is doing there, and where the guards are. Our hero then clenches his fist and furiously screams the knight's name, Karamov. And with a powerful punch, he makes a soldier's head explode and yells for Karamov to show himself. Our hero then stomps hard on the ground, showing that things are about to get serious. With his helmet cracked, he faces his opponent with a look full of determination. Meanwhile, Karamov's sword drips with blood, its runes glowing in the darkness. The knight then comments that he heard one of the Eads family's sons had escaped. He then recalls that it was Johan Eads, the same one who faced him in front of the castle. But our boy says he's not in the mood for a proper introduction with the guy. He then tells Karamov to just consider him a human, who is very ticked off at him. The knight scoffs, saying he would have lived if he had run away, and that his life is worthless. Then, with a sinister smile, he accepts the challenge, raising his glowing sword. And so, he invites him to the final showdown, since he's so eager to meet his end. With his eyes gleaming, our hero replies that's exactly what he's thinking. The knight then charges with his sword, ready to finish our boy once and for all. The two blades clash once more in a duel of pure strength and skill. With a swift strike, Karamov knocks off our hero's helmet and promises to cut off his head. He then calls him a kid and prepares for the final blow with all his strength. But suddenly, the knight is startled by something and wonders what that is, because our protagonist is using the serpent technique with an intense blue light on his sword, and the technique manifests as a giant, blue serpent ready to strike. The blow then lands squarely on the knight's arm with devastating force. The impact is so powerful that the legendary Danis armor begins to shatter in half. With a direct hit, our hero's sword strikes the knight square in the chest. Karamov then screams in pain and shock, unable to believe what just happened. In the knight's eyes, you can see the reflection of our boy's clenched fist, and without wasting a moment, he follows up with a direct punch to the Golden Knight's helmet. The blow is so powerful that the impact reverberates throughout Karamov's entire body. On top of that, the force is so great that the knight's helmet shatters into pieces. Karamov then cries out in pure agony, feeling the pain of the young man's devastating blow. His sword then falls from his hand and gets stuck in the brick ground of the courtyard. Wounded, he hunches forward, roaring in pain while clutching the side of the blow. With wide eyes, he stares at our hero, trying to understand what happened. He then recognizes Kajal's technique and realizes the kid had been hiding his skills. Meanwhile, our protagonist approaches with an aura of pure determination and fury. Karamov then starts coughing heavily, indicating the wound was quite severe. A dark pool begins to form on the ground, showing the gravity of the situation. The knight keeps coughing non-stop, barely able to stay on his feet in the fight. Wearing his brother's helmet, our hero stares him down with a cold, serious look. With no strength left to fight, Karamov finally falls to his knees on the ground. Our boy then approaches and asks why he did all of that to his people. The defeated knight replies that it was all for the good of his majesty, the emperor. He then explains that the Holy Empire is in danger and that the emperor acted to set things right. He then talks about his sword, which is also known as the Karamov sword. Even so, he continues to cough heavily, unable to get up from the ground. Suddenly, he starts to laugh and says he's truly moved by Johannese, because he says he wandered through decades of battles, but never met someone so strong. For that reason, he invites him to join the Empire and fight by his side. He then says that His Majesty needs a talent like our boy's, and he promises that the Empire's wealth will bring him glory and lots of gold, as well as a vast and fertile fiefdom for him to rule as he pleases, and that His Majesty himself will grant him the title of knight. And so, he invites him to become the Emperor's sword alongside him. Our protagonist then remains silent, thinking about the tempting offer. He then thinks that this is the life he always dreamed of, with tons of cash. But he finds it strange, because even though it's everything he ever wanted, he feels nothing. With a look full of fury, he then simply rejects the knight's offer. Karamov is completely shocked, not understanding the reason for the young man's refusal, and he yells that the knight not only took out his brother, but all of his subjects. The knight then asks with disdain if he's talking about the commoners, and he can't believe our boy is turning down the offer just because of them. With a sinister and hateful grin, he clenches his teeth in fury, and he screams that it doesn't matter if he took out a few commoners, because they're just insects. The knight then yells that the weak exist to spill their blood for the strong. Hearing that, our boy just clenches his teeth with a serious expression on his face. He then apologizes to his master, because just this once, he's not going to hold back. And so, with all his strength, our protagonist charges forward for the final blow without hesitation. The punch lands square on the knight's helmet, which shatters from the force of the impact. With a clenched fist, our boy shows all of his determination in that decisive blow. And in the darkness, the shards of the helmet fly in every direction. The knight can't take the hit, and his hand falls lifelessly onto the brick ground. Our hero's hand is also badly injured, but victory has been secured. And so, our protagonist stands before the fallen body of the Golden Knight. Our boy then turns his face with a weary expression after everything that went down, but the knight still has the strength to speak and calls him a fool for not accepting the offer. He then warns that now there's no turning back after what our hero has done, because our boy broke the Emperor's sword by defeating his best knight, and because of that, his life from now on will be filled with pure agony and suffering. Even so, our protagonist faces him with a serious and fearless gaze, and with his last words, the knight's finger goes limp, and he finally passes on. His body then lies lifeless on the courtyard ground, amidst the destruction and fire. To survive in this world, he had lived thinking only about money and nothing else. But now, with a red liquid dripping from his fist, we see that he has found a new purpose. He then reflects that those scoundrels wiped out everyone in his territory and burned it all down. And even if the world turns against him, our boy simply did what had to be done. So even if everyone curses him for it, he will never regret his decision, because he feels that this is his new journey and the beginning of a new path to follow. In the middle of the night, a stone gate slowly creaks open, revealing a castle courtyard. A guard then approaches a wooden door to check on what's happening inside. When he opens the door, he sees Jane and her elven soldiers standing there, and she begins to speak. With a furious look on her face, Jane asks if what the soldier said is true. The elf, all beaten up, says yes and begs her to believe him. He explains that our hero appeared out of nowhere and started thrashing all the soldiers. And then, with his own bare hands, he took out the knight Karamov, leaving her in utter shock. The soldier then says that was the last time they saw Karamov, and Jane is left speechless. She points to the courtyard and asks where the knight's body is if the story is true. The elf maiden shouts that it's absurd and that she needs proof to believe it. The soldier replies that he doesn't understand it either, but he saw everything happen with his own 2 eyes. Just then, another soldier arrives and announces that the pursuit party is ready. Jane then pulls herself together and starts walking with firm, determined steps. She turns to her troops and gives a clear order to everyone there. She commands them to pursue the target and take him out without hesitation. The elf maiden then reveals that the target of the hunt is our protagonist, Johan. The troops begin to move out to follow their leader's orders. She calls him a traitor and the prime suspect in Karamov's downfall. Jane then screams for them to hunt him down and bring him back, one way or another. Meanwhile, our hero is running through the forest with a determined look on his face. Meanwhile, our hero is in the middle of a brawl with several elven soldiers. One of them screams in pain as he's struck by our protagonist. With a swift blow, our boy takes out another soldier without mercy. Jane then warns her troops not to face him alone. She orders them to block off all the roads to wear him down until he can't go on. The soldiers are shocked, wondering if Karamov is really gone. With a determined gaze, Jane says there's one thing they need to do. Their mission is to bring our hero's head to the Emperor. Our boy then remembers the last words of his brother, Philip. He told him to grab a warhorse and run, to survive at all costs. In the present, Johan finds the stable and feels a moment of relief. Even so, he glances back suspiciously, still tense from the chase. He drops Karamov's body on the ground and thinks about what to do next. Our hero decides to keep carrying the armor to use as a shield. With great effort, he hefts the heavy body onto his back and continues on his way. Exhausted, he opens the stable door to find his only hope. Inside, he sees his father Gezen's warhorse, an imposing animal. Our protagonist approaches the horse and thanks his brother in his thoughts. With a smile, he says that with this animal, he'll finally be able to get some rest. He then decides his new companion needs a name. The horse stares at our hero with its bright, imposing blue eyes. So, he decides to name the horse Philip in honor of his late brother. Meanwhile, An elven soldier shouts that he saw something shining over there. He's sure it's the gleam of Danis steel and tells everyone to search. Suddenly, one of the soldiers hears a noise and realizes it's the sound of horse hooves. In the next moment, our hero flies past them on top of Philip. Our boy is completely focused on escaping as fast as he possibly can. One of the elves then yells in shock, seeing that it's Johan escaping on horseback. A moment later, our protagonist and his horse vanish into the darkness of the forest. The elven leader gets angry and orders his men to shoot him down. The archers then ready their crossbows and fire in our boy's direction, but the bolts hit Karamob's armor, which he's using as a shield. And just like that, Johan manages to escape through the night under the light of the full moon. He rides all night and finally manages to shake off his pursuers. After a long time, he arrives deep in the Black Forest. Our hero dismounts, exhausted, and thinks that it doesn't feel right to not bury a person, but he pushes that thought aside and focuses on what he really needs to do. The young man looks at Karamob's armor and thinks it looks pretty expensive. He then picks up the knight's purple sword, which was lying on the ground. He realizes the weapon is light yet sturdy and remembers that it's made of Danis steel. With the sword in hand, our hero notices it has some strange runes. He then realizes it's an ancient imperial script and gets very curious. A voice in his head says the sword is the crest retriever. Our boy then wonders if it retrieves family crests and thinks the name is kind of creepy. He decides to take the sword and bury the knight's armor for now. Johan thinks it's a waste, but promises that one day he'll come back for it. He then grabs a shovel and starts digging a hole in the middle of the forest. With a lot of effort, our hero manages to finish digging the grave. After a while, he finally finishes burying everything and rests for a bit. Tired, he wonders if what he did was enough to get rid of the body. Our boy remembers that news of the knight's downfall will spread, and he also remembers the knight's last words, saying his future would be nothing but suffering. But he thinks to himself that his life was already tough long before any of this happened. Our hero then reflects on what to do now that he's homeless and broke. Suddenly, a noise in the darkness catches his attention, putting him on high alert. He spins around quickly to see what it is and braces for the worst. And, just his luck, it was the same giant black wolf he had encountered before. Our protagonist is annoyed because the creature showed up right when he was completely exhausted. He knows he doesn't stand a chance of beating the monster in his current state. So, his only option is to try to get to his horse and get out of there. Suddenly, one of the elven soldiers shouts excitedly that he's found our hero's horse. They capture the animal, and the leader says that Johan must be nearby. Our protagonist recognizes the wolves of Akaton and is shocked they arrived so quickly. One of the elves spots him in the darkness and points at him with a cry of surprise. Immediately, the entire group aims their crossbows at our boy. Johan gets irritated, knowing there's no way he can fight all of them alone. He's trapped between the giant wolf in front of him and the soldiers right behind him. Our hero realizes there's nowhere to run and falls into total despair. He wonders if this is the end for him, but then something completely unexpected happens, because the wolf ignores our boy and starts attacking the elven soldiers without mercy. The creature charges forward with fury, and one of the elves screams for help in a panic. Johan is confused, wondering why the monster didn't attack him first, but he soon realizes the wolf is clearing a path for his escape. Our hero understands that this is his only chance to get out of there alive. He knows he has to move, because if not now, he will definitely meet his end. So with a yell, our protagonist sprints with all his might towards his horse. He pushes forward through the chaos to escape the situation. Our boy puts his foot in the stirrup and gets ready to mount his animal. With a leap, Johan gets on the horse and grips the reins tightly, and as he does, he starts to have some memories of his past. On his horse, our hero flees with a very determined look on his face. He then remembers when he was a child and a much simpler life. In the present, Johan continues his desperate escape through the dark forest. Various memories of his training and battles flash through his mind. He also recalls all the destruction he witnessed in his village. And with that, our boy leaves his burning home behind forever. Nearby, an elven soldier falls lifeless after the fight with the wolf. The giant creature then watches our protagonist's escape from a distance, and after helping him, the wolf vanishes into the dark of the night. Its red eyes seem to give our hero one last warning. Further ahead, Johan comes across a checkpoint set up by the elven soldiers. He realizes all the exits are blocked, and that he's cornered. Exhausted, our boy gets off his horse, having not eaten or slept properly. He never imagined he'd be hunted by the wolves of Akaden for 3 days straight. Our hero almost met his end several times because of their attacks. Now he's at his limit, and no longer has the strength to hold his sword. He sees more soldiers and wonders if there's really no way out of this. Hiding, our boy is at a loss for what to do in this situation. But suddenly, he spots a merchant caravan passing by. Johan then gets the idea to disguise himself as a merchant to escape. He thinks that if he looks like one of them, he might avoid suspicion. We're introduced to Eldons of the Gitana Trading Company. One of the guards, who has an eye patch, calls out to Master Eldons. The guard says it's a knight in heavy armor. A mercenary named Kan tells them to prepare for battle, but another one named Gaz doesn't understand all the fuss. Gorarn then tells him to take a better look at the situation. On top of that, he's wearing a plate helm and red gauntlets. Kan then tells the kid to look at the sword at his hip. He points to the purple hilt and reveals that it's a Dana's steel sword. Even so, Gas thinks that fighting him won't accomplish anything. Kan gets annoyed and tells someone to get the idiot out of his way. Another mercenary pulls him by the ear and tells him to shut his mouth. The leader, Eldons, then gives an order for Goran and Kan to get ready. With a serious look, he tells them to attack on his signal. The two mercenaries then reply that they got the message. Eldons then approaches our hero with his men. Kan advises them to knock him off his horse first when the fight starts. Eldons arrives and introduces himself as the leader of the trading company. Our protagonist is surprised to see a cat like Beastman. Eldon sees his men, tense and ready to fight our hero. With cold sweat dripping down, he gets really nervous about the situation. Johan thinks they're suspicious and that he needs to get them to lower their guard. He then introduces himself and says he was attacked by bandits on the road. Our boy asks the leader to tell his men not to attack him. Eldon starts to laugh and says that as a merchant, he has to be prepared. Johan then accepts the apology and gets ready to make a proposal. He asks if he can join their group, since bandits took all his money. In exchange for food and shelter, our hero will protect their caravan. Eldons thinks for a moment, and since our boy seems strong, he accepts the deal. The leader says they're heading to Marseille, and that it's going to be a long trip. Our protagonist thanks him for the help, but wonders where that place is. Eldons informs his men that Johan will be joining them for the time being, but with a serious look, he orders them to eliminate him if anything happens. The mercenaries agree to the order, though somewhat reluctantly. Our hero feels relieved and thinks that now all he needs to do is get past the checkpoint. And so, the caravan continues its journey with our boy alongside them. Nearby, an elven soldier notices that something is coming their way. They are the wolves of Akaden, and they order the caravan to stop for an inspection. Johan then thinks that it's finally time, and he just needs to get through quietly. Eldons then introduces himself to the elf and says he's from the Gitana Trading Company. The soldier is shocked because the Marseille company is so powerful that not even the emperor can mess with them. The guard changes his tone and says they're hunting a traitor and need their help. Hearing this, our hero realizes the checkpoint was set up just to catch him. One of the elves points at our boy and orders him to take off his helmet to show his face. Johan gets really nervous, but makes up a story about having a skin condition to avoid being discovered. The soldiers make fun of him and tell him to hurry up and take off the helmet so they can see his messed up face. With a suspicious look, the leader asks if our protagonist is hiding something. Our hero then realizes there's no way out, and he'll have to fight his way through. But suddenly, the leader Eldons yells, telling everyone to stop this nonsense. He asks if the guard is doubting his company, and the elf tries to explain himself. the beastman gets angry and threatens to file a complaint directly with their commander. Furthermore, he says he'll make the complaint in person at the Marseille branch. The guard gets scared and tells his men to let the caravan pass without any more trouble. The other soldiers are annoyed but clear the way for the group to continue their journey. The elf says our boy got lucky, and he breathes a sigh of relief for having escaped that one. And so, the caravan continues its journey, and Johan thinks he's finally made it out. He looks back and sees the guards watching his departure from a distance. The elven soldiers stand there, watching the caravan disappear down the road. Later that night, the group makes camp, and Eldens organizes the night watch shifts. At the camp, Eldens is reviewing some papers before turning in. He then calls Johan over and tells him to go to sleep, since he has no obligations there. Our protagonist is grateful for the kindness, as he's exhausted after everything. He then grabs his sleeping bag to finally pass out after days without rest. Our boy tosses and turns, and one of the mercenaries notices that he's finally managed to fall asleep. He then sleeps soundly by the campfire, regaining his strength. Meanwhile, hidden in the darkness, someone is watching the camp from afar. The mysterious man has a sinister smile on his face and seems to have a plan in mind. He then tells his men to get ready for what's coming. A moment later, he reveals the plan is to surround the camp and attack all at once. Meanwhile, Johan dreams of his past life as a soldier in the army. He remembers a training exercise where he used a defensive tactic against a larger enemy. Because of this, he became an example to the other soldiers for his intelligence. He was then rewarded with a 5-day leave and a commendation for his achievement. Our boy salutes and shouts with pride to his commander. He gets excited, thinking the military life suits him, since he studied tactics before. But he soon remembers the downsides, like the old-fashioned culture and the exhausting shifts. On top of that, the biggest problem of all was the salary, which was a total joke. In the dream, he's grabbed and realizes there's no escaping that place. The nightmare ends, and our hero wakes up startled, and in a cold sweat back at the camp. Our hero wakes up and realizes it was all just a bad dream. He sits up and complains that his whole body is sore because of the nightmare. But suddenly, he senses that something strange is happening in the camp. The full moon lights up the sky, and a shower of arrows starts raining down out of nowhere. Confused, our boy looks up and sees the projectiles coming right at him. With a quick move, he reaches out his hand to catch one of the arrows in mid-air. His eyes widen as he realizes the danger just in the nick of time. He narrowly manages to catch the arrow just before it hits him right in the face. He then realizes it's an attack and that the soldiers have finally found him. Annoyed, our hero gets up and decides he needs to alert the mercenaries. With all his might, he screams, warning that enemies are attacking the camp. The shout wakes everyone up, putting Eldens and the other mercenaries on high alert. The story then flashes back to 5 minutes before the attack alarm sounded. The mercenary Gaz is complaining to Khan about them having to do all the heavy lifting. Khan gets annoyed with the complaint and tells the kid to shut his mouth right now. Gaz is confused and doesn't understand why his companion is telling him off. Khan then explains that you can't trust a guy you barely know with guard duty. On top of that, he warns that acting without thinking won't get you very far in this line of work. The mercenary then asks why the young man decided to join their group. Gaz gets mad and says if he'd known the group was so cowardly, he never would have joined. Khan gets angry and asks if the kid ate something bad, because it sounds like he's looking to meet his end. The mercenary then gets ready to teach the boy a lesson for his insolence. But suddenly, our hero's shout echoes through the camp, putting both of them on alert. Immediately after, a shower of arrows starts to fall, and they dive to the ground. Khan acts fast and shields Gaz from the attack, so he doesn't get hit. After the first wave, he notices the arrow shower has stopped for a moment. He then tells the kid to go provide support for the rest of the group in the battle. But Gaz panics and takes off running, screaming in fear and abandoning his post. Khan is furious at his cowardice, and Gorn approaches to see if he's okay. The young man warns him that it's an enemy attack, and that arrows came out of nowhere. Kan then asks where the coward is, but is more concerned about the leader's safety. Goran says that Eldens is hiding under the carriage and tells him to get ready. That moment, our hero appears and starts giving orders to the mercenaries. He tells them to form a defensive circle around the carriage to protect themselves. Our protagonist explains that they need to fight together since they don't know where the attack is coming from. But Kan glares at him and asks if he's their boss to be giving orders like that. The mercenary then says they handle their own business and tells Johan to fend for himself. Our boy is shocked by the guy's stubbornness in the middle of an attack. Even so, Gorn orders his men to grab their shields and prepare for a fight. Johan insists and asks for a shield, since he's fought in similar situations before. But Eldens shouts that he's not getting anything, and tells our hero to handle himself in the fight. Our boy is pretty upset, realizing that no one here trusts him to fight. Suddenly, his expression changes as he senses a new threat approaching in the darkness. A moment later, a horde of bandits with some really ugly faces charges the camp. Johan then realizes they aren't the wolves of Akaton and wonders if they're just bandits. The criminals keep charging at the group without a second thought. Kan then shouts and orders all his men to attack with full force. Our hero is shocked, wondering who's going to protect the carriage if everyone leaves. The fight breaks out, and one of the mercenaries curses the bandits for attacking at night. The bandit leader yells to press forward, since they have the advantage in numbers. Goran then screams for his men not to fall back, or else they'll meet their end. But one of the bandits grabs him by the face and tells him to shut up with a powerful blow. Seeing this, Kan screams out in desperation, calling the name of Captain Goran, who's in danger. The bandit then raises his sword to deliver the final blow to the mercenary on the ground. Seeing this, our hero rushes to save him with his purple sword in hand. With a swift movement, he unleashes a slash of purple energy toward the enemy. The bandit is confused, not understanding what that light coming at him is. The attack then hits him dead on, cutting him in half with no chance to defend. Goran is in shock as he watches the scene, getting covered in the enemy's red liquid. Our protagonist then stands with his swords in hand, realizing the power of his attack. Our boy's sword glows with red runes, leaving the bandits in shock. The bandit leader then notices that the rune on the sword is absorbing the red liquid. He yells that it's a demonic sword, not understanding how a merchant's guard has something like that. Johan then takes advantage of their fear and shouts that he is a noble of the Yeast's family. Hearing this, Kan is shocked and confused by our hero's revelation. Goran is also surprised and wonders if he was a noble this whole time. In his thoughts, he wonders if changing the name Eights to Yeasts will cause any problems. The bandits panic, knowing that messing with a noble will end very badly for them. With his sword glowing, he asks again if they will surrender or not. He then asks if they are going to surrender right now, or if they'd rather meet their end by his sword. The bandits are terrified, and he tells them to think carefully about their decision. Their leader starts to sweat, not knowing what to do in this situation. One by one, the bandits start dropping their swords on the ground. Soon, a pile of weapons forms on the campground. With their hands up, they surrender to our protagonist. Our hero then holds his sword and prepares to give his next command. He calls Goran and asks the mercenary to tie up all the prisoners. He warns that if anyone resists, the mercenary can finish them off. With the situation resolved, he asks Eldens what they should do now. Goran is worried about the noble and wonders if he'll be offended for being treated poorly, but Eldens says he'll smooth things over, since they accepted him into the caravan willingly. He then approaches our boy and thanks him for his hard work that night. The Beastman then offers a reward, thinking that if he'd known, he would have given him a shield. Our hero says he doesn't need it, and that he's just happy everyone is safe. Eldens is surprised because our boy doesn't even want a reward for helping out. The two then stand there for a moment under the starlight. Our boy then asks if next time he could borrow a shield. Eldens agrees immediately and promises he'll lend him a shield without fail. Our hero says he wants to interrogate the prisoners, and the leader lets him go. Now that his status has been revealed, he says he'll speak more casually. He then kicks one of the prisoners and tells the guy to get a move on. The bandit groans in pain from the kick he just took from our boy. Our hero then asks who they are and why they attacked the caravan. The bandit reveals that they are soldiers from the exterminated Brit's family. He explains that months ago, the family was betrayed and everyone was taken out. The bandit then reveals that the attackers were the feared wolves of Akaton. They resisted, but when the noble executor arrived, they were defeated. Goran is surprised by the name Noble Executor and thinks he's heard it before, and he reveals that his name is Karamov, the Emperor's own hunting dog. The bandit kneels and begs for forgiveness, as he didn't know the caravan belonged to a noble. He says the army hunted them down, and that even the Northerners turned their backs on them. So he says that stealing isn't justified, but they needed to survive somehow. Our hero then asks if there was any other reason they attacked the group. The bandit replies no, and that they only wanted the Merchant Guild's charter. Hearing this, Eldens becomes furious and yells that the charter is a matter of trust. He says they caused so much trouble, and Johan tells the leader to take it easy. Our hero then remembers Karamov saying the same thing about betraying the Emperor. With a serious look, he grits his teeth and finally understands what's happening. He realizes the Emperor just needed an excuse to get rid of the nobles. He then remembers the knight and curses him for falling for the Emperor's talk. Our boy realizes that in the end, they are just victims of power, just like him. Even so, he knows they are bandits, and deciding their fate won't be easy. Kan then asks what to do with them and offers to get more information out of them. But our hero says that's not necessary, as they've already told them everything they needed to. Suddenly, Jazz grabs his mace and decides to put an end to one of the prisoners. But before he can land the blow, Kan stops him with his own weapon. The mercenary defends the bandit and shows he's not going to let the kid continue. Gas is shocked and asks why he's stopping him from getting his revenge. Kan then says they don't have the right to punish them because they surrendered to the noble. Gaz looks embarrassed and agrees with Kan that he was in the wrong. Meanwhile, the bandits kneel and beg the knight to spare their lives. They cry and tremble with fear, knowing that their end is very near. Kan then turns to Johan and offers to finish them all off right there. With his hand on his sword, he waits for our hero's order to start the job. But to everyone's surprise, our boy tells them to untie and release the prisoners. The bandits are shocked and start crying with relief at his decision. Gas is outraged and asks why our protagonist is letting them live. Our hero ignores the young man and turns to the bandits with a message. He says he understands their situation, but being a bandit is never the solution. He then reveals that he also learned a trade to be able to survive. Eldens is shocked to hear a noble say he needed to learn a job. Goran also comments that he's only here for the good pay he gets. Our boy then says he will spare their lives on one condition. The bandits bow in gratitude and promise they will never forget his kindness. The group then prepares to leave, and our hero doesn't want any more trouble. But from a distance, the silhouette of a wolf watches everything from the top of a hill. The mysterious creature seems to be following the caravan's steps. It's the same giant wolf with red eyes that our boy has met before. Before heading to Marcel, the group decides to stop in a village called Lutzbach. In the village of Lutzbach, the chief is informed that Eldens of the Gitana company has arrived. The village leader then goes to meet the beastman to welcome him. Eldens greets him with an enthusiastic hug and says it's been months since they've seen each other. The chief hugs him back and asks if anything happened on the way there. The beastman explains that they ran into bandits and that things are looking bad with the emperor. The chief scolds him, warning that someone might hear him speaking ill of his majesty. Even so, Eldon says they managed to deliver everything thanks to a noble who helped them. The chief is surprised, but says that another noble also showed up there a few weeks ago. He says the guy was a fake noble, and that he kicked him out of the village. Eldens laughs and says his friend hasn't changed his habit of acting without thinking of the consequences. But he assures him that the noble accompanying them is different and very brave. The chief is shocked because the guy didn't even ask for a reward for his good deed. He then thinks that having a knight in the village would be a great help against the bandits. Besides, a real knight would be strong enough to take out an entire group. The chief then invites our hero to stay in the village for a few weeks. Eldons refuses the invitation, but the chief insists, and the two start to argue. The beast man then realizes his friend is trying to steal his companion. The chief then changes the subject and asks where the noble knight is. Meanwhile, our hero is sitting under a tree, looking very tired. He's starving and about to pass out from weakness. Goran then approaches our hero to talk to him about something. He holds out his hand and offers something to our protagonist. The mercenary hands him a bag of coins and says it's the bandits' money. He explains that they sold everything the bandits had and it brought in a good amount of cash. Our hero asks if they aren't going to take any, and Gorn says it was all his doing. Our boy then thinks for a moment about what to do with all that money. But to everyone's surprise, he hands the money back to Goran. The mercenary doesn't understand and says the spoils are his by right. Our hero then says he took his share and shows just a few coins. He insists that it's okay, but in his mind, he's crying over the lost money. Even so, he knows that staying with the group is better than facing the wolves alone. Goran is touched and says they fought together like true companions. Our boy then shows a single coin and thinks this will make the guy like him even more. With that, he says his goodbyes and gets ready to continue on his way. Goran blushes and thinks that our hero's dignity is that of a true knight. Later, he gathers the other mercenaries to give them an important message. He says that Joan praised their efforts and that he's going to distribute the profits. Excited, he tells everyone to line up to receive their share of the money. The mercenaries are shocked, unable to believe they're actually getting something. They then look at him, confused. The mercenaries then get super excited and start cheering in celebration. They raise their fists and shout our hero's name all through the village. Meanwhile, our boy is resting at a nearby inn. He finally manages to sleep in peace with his sword and a pretty funny-looking cap. But in the middle of the night, his room door starts to creak very slowly, and a moment later, the doorknob turns and the door opens carefully. Despite the noise, our hero keeps sleeping, completely unaware. Suddenly, a pair of red eyes appears in the darkness of the room, and an assassin prepares to take our boy out with his dagger. During the night, an assassin creeps up and tries to snatch our hero's sword. But John snaps awake and grabs the man's wrist with an iron grip. The attacker is in total shock. He never expected our boy to be awake. With his eyes glowing in the dark, our main character demands an answer. He then asks if the guy is one of Karamob's goons. The assassin panics and screams for our hero to let him go. Losing his patience, Johan just eats him, smashing him right through a cabinet. Lying on the floor all banged up, the man coughs and whimpers in fear. Our main character then walks over and steps on the attacker's leg. The man screams for help, realizing that Johan isn't your average human. The scene then rewinds 5 minutes, back at the same inn. We see the village chief snoring his head off, while 2 young men sneak up the stairs. They are Pra and Gamson, and they're plotting something against our guy. Gamson says that Vulin, the village's strongest guy, is going to take care of Johan. He also mentions that Pell, the horse fanatic, is already out there snatching the animal. Outside, Pell is completely blown away by the warhorse and tries to calm it down. Meanwhile, Pra asks Gamson if the noble's sword is really that expensive. Gamson then asks Pra if he's ever seen a sword that could slice a man clean in half. He claims he saw the weapon split an armored soldier in 2, easy as pie, and he says the knight is nothing without his sword, but a loud crash startles them. Sprawled on the floor, Vulin is terrified as he sees our guy's blue eyes glowing in the darkness. A moment later, our hero drags the man out of the room while he screams for help. Outside, Gamson is completely stunned, with no clue what's going on. Pra then grabs him by the shoulders and asks what the heck is happening. but Gamson just screams at him to run if he wants to stay alive. He can feel they've really messed up and wonders, who is this guy? Just then, the village chief shows up and asks who the two idiots are. Without answering, the boys bolt out of the inn and into the night. Outside, Pell is already waiting with the horses and says they finally made it. Gamson then yells at him to hurry up and get ready to flee. Pell is confused and asks his friend where Vulin is. Angry, Gamson shouts that Vulin is a goner or is about to meet his end. He then tells everyone to get on their horses so they can get away as fast as possible. Pra says he can't just leave Vulin, but Gamson rushes him, afraid the noble will follow them. Suddenly, a massive explosion rips through the inn, destroying everything. Terrified, the three of them look back, unable to believe what just happened. They then see Joan landing on the roof, surrounded by a terrifying red aura. With his eyes glowing, our hero glares at the boys with pure fury. The scene shifts to the outskirts of the Southern Empire, in a grim place, and a hand holds a wooden mallet, about to smash something. Two soldiers in armor finish nailing up a wooden sign. The notice says that these people stole from a noble, and for that, their families have been punished. And the order came from the emperor himself, of the Holy Cardirian Bizalfric Empire. One of the guards then asks what they stole to end up like that. He finds out the crime was stealing 1 chicken and 3 eggs from Baron Dvorab. The soldier is shocked to learn they all met such a tragic end, and it was all because of such a small and insignificant crime. Meanwhile, in a tavern at night, the full moon lights up the sky. The caravan leader, Eldens, is having a quiet dinner at a table. He's enjoying his meal and having a drink to unwind. But a man runs in and says there's a problem involving Mr. Eldens. He reveals that Gamson was caught trying to steal from our hero, Johan. Eldens is startled and spits out his drink, shouting in surprise at the news. He gets annoyed, thinking he wanted to convince Johan to travel with them to Marcel. The beastman then takes a deep breath and tries to calm down to think of a solution. He orders them to capture Gamson, and for the rest of the group to pretend they know nothing. The messenger is impressed with his leader's calmness in a moment of crisis. Inwardly, Eldens is panicking but tries to keep his composure. He thinks he needs to find a way to handle the noble, just in case. And so, the caravan leader sits there alone, thinking about what to do next. Under the full moon, a blue flag flutters atop a wooden house. Inside, the village chief is wrapping up a meeting with other villagers. Suddenly, a man rushes in and shouts that things have gotten ugly. He tells them those troublemakers, caught trying to rob the noble. The chief becomes furious and calls the boys useless, slamming his hand on the table. The other villagers panic and ask what they should do. The chief orders them to gather gifts for the noble and to include a slave. With a serious look, he also tells them to prepare for the boy's execution. The boy's parents become desperate and say he can't do that. The chief then completely loses it and throws a chair at them, calling them idiots. He screams, asking if they've already forgotten the emperor's decree. With a determined look, he says they need to act before the noble does. The law states that anyone who covets a noble's property will have their tongue cut out, or they could be sentenced to hanging, along with their entire family. The parents are terrified because entire families have been wiped out for this before. The chief explains that it happened just for asking for 1 chicken and 3 eggs. He then yells and asks what they think the noble is going to do now. For offending a noble, he will surely want to punish everyone. One of the men suggests asking for help from Count Jarpen, the owner of this territory, but the chief just laughs and says nobles only care about their little games of honor. The village chief then slams his fist on the table and screams for the villagers to wake up. With tears in her eyes, one of the boy's mothers cries in silence. The other villagers just hang their heads without saying a word. The chief then asks if they think he feels good about doing this. He says it's for the good of the village and asks them to accept his decision. That night, the villagers gather around a large tree. The 3 young men are kneeling and tied up, crying in fear. Our hero watches everything with a serious expression, his hands bandaged. He thinks to himself that the situation has blown up way more than he expected. He thought they were assassins, but they're just kids who wanted his expensive sword. Because of this, he decides he's going to keep the weapon hidden from now on. Our guy then decides he'll scare them a little and then let them go. Sitting there with his sword, he looks exhausted from all the chaos. The village chief approaches with a nervous smile and asks if he's okay. With a sour look on his face, our main character yells that he is now okay. He then asks if this is how they welcome guests in this village. The chief immediately throws himself on the ground and apologizes desperately. He says it's all his fault for not being able to control the idiots. Our hero then says the scare was enough and tells everyone to leave. And finally, he raises a simple sword as if to teach them a lesson. With wide eyes, our hero watches the scene in disbelief. The chief then yells that he will cleanse the noble's honor with his own hands. Our guy thinks that this lunatic is just making the whole situation worse. But the chief insists that whoever tarnished the noble's honor deserves to meet their end. With a cry of rage, the chief brings the dagger down with all his might. The boy's mother screams in despair, covering her face with her hands. However, the dagger is stopped by something and digs into the ground with a heavy impact. With a furious look, our guy asks if the chief didn't hear him. It turns out our hero grabbed the chief's hand and stopped the blow. The village chief is terrified by our main character's reaction. The other villagers are also startled by the noble's actions. The crowd of villagers watches the scene in silence under the moonlight. Our guy then stands up and yells, asking if everyone there has gone crazy. He says if they want them to pay for their crimes, they should pay with money. Everyone falls silent, not understanding our hero's proposal. In his thoughts, he wonders if his love for cash was a bit too obvious. He then calls to cover it up and says he'll repeat himself. With a serious look, he asks how honor can be more valuable than life. Finally, he throws the dagger to the ground and tells them to release the boys. The chief then falls to his knees, crying and thanking him for his honorable decision. Kneeling, the villagers thank Johan for his kindness and promise to never forget. Soon after, the parents run to hug their children, crying with relief and joy. The chief also cries emotionally and apologizes in his thoughts to Eldons for ever doubting him. Meanwhile, Gamson apologizes to Johan for falling for some idiot's scheme. An old man then scolds the youths, telling them they got lucky with our hero. Just then, the mercenary K approaches Gamson, who tells him to untee him already. The boy then complains that he never should have joined this unlucky bunch. Annoyed by his audacity, K grabs Gamson's head with great force. With a cold stare, he tells the boy to relax, because it'll be easier this way. Gamson is terrified and stammers, asking what he's talking about. But in the blink of an eye, a red liquid flies everywhere. Our main character then turns around to see what happened behind him. With a serious face, he observes the scene, his blue eyes shining in the night. However, our guy is confused and doesn't quite get what just went down. Suddenly, Gamson's life is brutally taken by the mercenary K in front of everyone. His eyes widen in despair in his final moment of life. And then, the young man falls lifelessly to the ground in a terrible scene. K holds his bloody dagger after doing the dirty work. Our hero is in shock and yells, asking what the hell he's doing. With a serious look, K says he acted according to the imperial decree. He claims to have executed the one who coveted a noble's wealth. Furious, our guy shouts that he had made it very clear he didn't want any trouble. Gaz and Eldons are frightened by our main character's furious reaction. But K turns to Johan and says that even mercenaries have honor and rules. He explains that Gamson's actions tarnished the honor of the entire group. Calmly, the mercenary then begins to clean his battle sword. Our hero watches it all, still very serious about what just happened. K then offers his sword and says Johan can punish him if he thinks he was wrong. Our guy is surprised and starts to break out in a cold sweat at the mercenary's attitude. He realizes K is putting his own life on the line to defend his honor. With a trembling hand, our main character reaches for the sword K is offering. Eldons and Gaz watch the tense scene, not knowing what will happen. But our hero pushes the blade aside, refusing to take it. And finally, he apologizes, saying he didn't consider Kay's position. Gaz and the leader Eldons shout in shock at our hero's action. Kay's jaw drops too, because a noble would never apologize. Our guy then tells him to put the dagger away, and the mercenary awkwardly obeys. With the situation resolved, Johan thanks everyone there for their understanding. Later, Gaz chews Kay out for being so reckless with the noble. Meanwhile, Eldons looks at our hero with a sparkle in his eyes. The Beastman then realizes that this noble is completely different from the others. He thinks that Johan is brave and just, but without the arrogance of nobles. Because of this, Eldons decides he must make him an ally at all costs. And so, the caravan continues its journey as the sun sets on the horizon. Our hero then takes out a pocket watch he received as a gift. He complains that he took the item because it looked expensive, but then discovered it's broken. With a sideways glance, he seems a little regretful of his choice, and to make matters worse, he realizes he's now got another mouth to feed. As they arrive at a wooden gate, someone shouts our hero's name. The village chief then approaches with gifts as a token of gratitude. Our guy then picks up the watch and wonders how it ended up there. The chief then offers a slave, saying he knows the region well. Our main character is shocked, as he's never seen someone in such bad shape. And finally, he accepts the gift and tells them to give the boy a bath and some food. With the new boy in the group, our hero feels that having a slave is weird. Meanwhile, at the camp, the mercenaries thank Johan for the food. Our guy is sitting by the fire when the young man calls him master. With a smile, the boy thanks Johan and brings him a meal. But our hero tells him not to call him master and just use his name. The young man is embarrassed by the request, and our guy doesn't know what to think. Our main character then asks how someone so knowledgeable became a slave. Sitting by the fire, the young man says it's not a very pleasant story, but our hero insists, since he knows bad stories too, and the boy agrees. He then explains that he was a weapons and armor seller in the East. But one day, a noble ordered him to smuggle gold for him. Our guy is surprised, since that usually results in the death penalty. The young man explains that he needed money to help his sick siblings, and so he delivered the gold as the noble had instructed. However, the noble himself reported him, using a fake mustache as a disguise. Our hero then realizes the noble used him, and then threw him away. The boy reveals he didn't even get a trial, because of the imperial decree. Our main character then gets angry and asks if he managed to help his siblings. With tears in his eyes, the young man says the guards stole all the money. He then cries and apologizes, saying he just got something in his eye. Our hero watches everything with a serious and thoughtful expression. He then realizes that this world is just too sick and cruel, because if you're weak, the nobles will exploit you, and no one dares to complain, like the soldiers from the Blitz family, who became bandits to survive, or the people of Lutzbach, who were forced to sacrifice their own children, and even Goyd, who was used and discarded by the nobility without a second thought. Our guy then wonders if this is right and finds it all very pathetic, but he remembers that he's being hunted and could meet his end at any moment. With that in mind, our main character calls out to Goyd, who answers, startled. He then says that they're comrades now, and that they have to survive together. Goyd is surprised and blushes at our hero's words. Suddenly, a mercenary runs up to them and yells that a monster has appeared. Our guy sighs, tired, as it seems he won't get a minute of peace. He then gets up and runs with the soldier to see what's happening. Goyd stays behind, thinking about the promise to survive together. Our hero then joins the other mercenaries hiding in the bushes. They see a red aura and confirm that there's a monster nearby. With a serious look, our guy prepares himself for what's coming. As he stands there, someone from the back tells him to get down, but with a smile on his face, our main character says that it's okay. Our hero then orders the mercenaries to lower their weapons. With a smile, he says it's all right, and they don't need to worry. Kay and Gaz are confused by the order, but our guy repeats it, lower them. He then says he's going to check out the situation, and walks toward the forest. The mercenaries are worried, as fighting monsters requires special skills. Besides, they can't take any risks since their mission is to protect their leader, Eldens. Our guy then feels a familiar and chilling presence approaching. He sees a red aura and a pressure that freezes the soul coming from the darkness. It's the glowing red eyes in the dark that our hero already knows. It's the Black Wolf of Ill Omen, and he's sure it's the same one from before. He remembers that last time, the wolf helped him by attacking the soldiers. Our main character knows the creature could have attacked him at any moment, but with a smile, he realizes the wolf has no intention of hurting him. Our hero then tells the monster to stop hiding and show itself. With a snarl, the giant wolf emerges from the darkness with its red eyes. Our guy then thanks it for saving his life last time. The mercenaries are shocked and wonder if Johan is a monster tamer. The wolf then gets closer and starts sniffing our main character's face. The creature then begins to lick our hero in a very affectionate way. The mercenaries are left with their mouths wide open, not understanding a thing that's going on. Our hero then tells everyone not to be scared because the wolf isn't evil. He reveals that the creature is actually the Dawn's messenger. With an excited smile, the leader Eldens seems to recognize the name, but our guy is confused, not understanding what the Beastman is talking about. Eldens then recounts an old song from the Eastern Empire to explain. The legend speaks of a warrior who gave a name to a wolf on a night of war. The name was the Dawn's messenger, and the wolf bowed before the warrior. With blue eyes, the wolf led the warrior in battles across the continent. At the end of the war, the hero brought peace but met his end soon after. The wolf then mourned for 3 days and traveled to where heroes were needed. The legendary creature was the Dawn's messenger with bright blue eyes. Our guy then asks if the legend is correct because the wolf was known by another name. Eldens explains that the legend got twisted when it reached the Southern Empire, but the original story says the wolf punishes evil and submits to a hero. The Beastman claims that this is written in the ancient texts of the Empire. Our hero is then surprised to learn that the wolf is a legendary creature. With an excited smile, Eldens asks for permission to pet the wolf, but the creature snarls and shows its teeth, scaring the caravan leader. The Beastman then gets scared and says it's probably better not to touch the animal. And finally, he realizes the wolf is only gentle with our main character, Johan. Eldens then remembers an important part of the Eastern folklore. The legend says that if you name a divine beast, it becomes your familiar. He then wonders if our hero is actually a legendary hero. The leader asks if Johan has given the wolf a name yet, and he says not yet. Excited, Eldens suggests that he give the creature a name right then and there. Our guy is surprised, because something incredible could happen if the legend is real. He then thinks of a name for the wolf and suggests calling it Keta, but our hero remembers the last time he saw Karamav and gets an idea. With a determined look, he points at the wolf and names it Karamav. Eldens is shocked and yells, asking the reason for that strange name. Suddenly, a red aura surrounds the wolf, its eyes glowing. Our guy is startled by the creature's reaction to receiving its name. A blue light then appears and envelopes the wolf in a powerful transformation. A beam of light descends from the heavens and strikes the creature dead. Our hero and Eldens watch the scene, amazed by what's happening. Blue smoke fills the area, shrouding them both in darkness. Our main character is then blown away by the wolf's transformation. The creature is now the Dawn's messenger, Karamav, with a blue aura. Its paws now glow with the new energy coursing through its body, and finally it bows before our hero as his new familiar. Our hero then approaches the wolf to pet it calmly. With a smile, he says he's counting on his new friend, Karamav. He then tells Eldens that all of this is incredible, and the Beastman agrees. Suddenly, the caravan leader throws himself to the ground and begins to bow. He says it's the first time he's ever seen a myth become reality before his very eyes. The Beastman claims he has respected our guy from the moment they met, and for being chosen by the divine beast, he calls him the hero of hard times. Our main character is embarrassed by all the unexpected flattery. Gaz and the other mercenaries are also shocked by the revelation. Goid is also surprised to learn that his new master is a hero. Everyone then bows before our hero and his legendary wolf. But our guy apologizes and tells Eldens he's no hero. He explains he's just a wanderer from a small family, trying to survive. Furthermore, he reveals that he's on the run for having finished off the real Karamov. Eldens is speechless, but our hero says he didn't want to disappoint him. With a determined look, the leader then makes a request to repay his kindness. He asks for permission to introduce Johan to the Marcel Merchants Guild. Our guy then asks what Marcel is, as he's never heard of the place. Eldens explains it's a free trade city and one of the few places the Emperor doesn't rule. Our hero then accepts the offer, and the leader thanks him, deeply moved. With a smile on his face, our hero thinks about the opportunity in Marcel. As Eldens sings the legend, our guy gets a little worried. He thinks about this title, Caro of Hard Times, and reflects on it, but he knows he's just a wanderer trying to protect his own life. Because of this, he remembers the knight's warning about his future of pain. Even so, he clenches his fist, because his life has never been easy, because this time, by his own will, he will move forward, step by step, and with this newfound determination, they set off for the city of Marcel.